Blood runs cold when a Mafia bride whispers 6 words on her wedding night. Please don't hurt me like he did. Dante Moretti built an empire on fear. He married Alara Voss to seal a deal, nothing more. But when she flinched at his touch and he saw the bruises she couldn't hide, everything changed. This wasn't business anymore. Someone had broken her long before she became his wife. And in his world, there's only one response to that kind of violation: total destruction. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. The Cathedral of St. Michael stood like a monument to old money and older sins, its Gothic spires clawing at a sky threatening rain. Inside, 200 guests sat in pews that cost more than most people earned in a year, their designer clothes and practiced smiles masking the fact that everyone here understood what this really was: a transaction. Dante Moretti stood at the altar, his Armani suit fitted perfectly to a frame built for violence, his dark eyes scanning the crowd with the casual assessment of a predator taking inventory. He recognized the faces: rival families forced to witness this merger, corrupt politicians he owned, businessmen who laundered his money through legitimate fronts. Every single one of them afraid of him, as they should be. At 34, Dante had built the Moretti empire into something his father could never have imagined. Drugs, weapons, real estate, shipping. If money moved through this city, he touched it. His reputation wasn't just fearsome, it was absolute. Men whispered his name in dark rooms and made sure their debts were paid on time. He didn't feel nervous. Dante didn't do nervous. The organ music swelled, and the crowd rose. He turned to watch his bride approach. Alara Voss moved down the aisle like a porcelain doll on strings, each step measured and mechanical. Her dress was stunning, ivory silk that probably cost 6 figures, designed by someone whose name Dante couldn't remember and didn't care about. Her dark hair was swept up in an elaborate style, her makeup flawless enough to belong in a magazine. But her eyes were empty. Dante had seen those eyes before in different faces, in men who knew they were about to die, in witnesses who understood their families' lives depended on their silence, in people who had given up. He filed the observation away. This marriage was strategy, nothing more. The Voss family controlled shipping routes his organization needed. Victor Voss, Alara's father, had debts he couldn't pay and enemies he couldn't fight. This wedding solved his problems and expanded Dante's reach. That Alara looked like she was walking to her execution instead of the altar, well, that wasn't his concern. She was 26 years old, educated, came from the right family. Pretty enough, though he barely registered that. In 6 months, maybe a year, they'd produce an heir to secure the bloodline, and she'd live her life in whatever wing of his mansion she preferred while he ran his empire. Simple, clean, beneficial for everyone involved. She reached the altar. Her father, Victor, lifted her veil with hands that trembled slightly, though whether from age, alcohol, or fear, Dante couldn't tell. The old man's face was bloated and red, his expensive suit unable to hide the decay underneath. He kissed his daughter's cheek, and Dante watched Alara's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. Interesting. The ceremony began. Father Dominic, one of the few priests in the city who could be bought, droned through the vows with the enthusiasm of a man reading a phone book. Dante barely listened, mentally running through the evening's schedule. Dinner, dancing, the expected speeches. His underboss, Marco, was handling security. His consigliere, Luca, had arranged for the honeymoon suite at the Fitzgerald, the presidential floor, naturally, which Dante owned through a shell corporation. Then he'd consummate this arrangement, establish the marriage legally, and tomorrow they'd sign the papers that transferred the Voss shipping contracts to his control. Business. Do you, Dante Alessio Moretti, take this woman? I do. He cut the priest off. No need to drag this out. Father Dominic blinked, flustered, then turned to Alara. And do you, Alara Catherine Voss? I do. Her voice was barely a whisper, but steady. Her eyes remained fixed on some point beyond the altar, not meeting Dante's gaze or anyone else's. The ring exchange was mechanical. Her fingers were ice cold when he slid the band onto her hand, a 3-carat diamond that his assistant had selected, flanked by sapphires to match the Moretti family colors. She put his ring on with movements so careful they seemed rehearsed, like she was terrified of making a mistake. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Dante turned to her. This close, he could see the foundation caked slightly thicker on one side of her jaw. Could see the way her breathing had gone shallow. Could see her pupils dilate just a fraction as he leaned in. She was afraid of him. Good. Everyone should be. The kiss was brief, her lips completely unresponsive under his, like kissing marble. When he pulled back, she immediately lowered her gaze, her shoulders curling inward just slightly, a motion most people wouldn't notice. Dante noticed everything. The reception was held at the Belmonte estate, a sprawling mansion in the hills that had been in the Voss family for 4 generations. Dante had been here twice before, once to negotiate the marriage terms with Victor, once to finalize the contracts. The place reeked of old money losing its grip, all gilt fixtures and fading grandeur, the kind of desperate elegance that came from refinancing ancestral portraits to pay the electric bill. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and forced gaiety. A string quartet played in one corner while waiters circulated with champagne and canapes that cost more per plate than the musicians would make all night. The crowd had loosened up, alcohol smoothing over the earlier tension. Dante stood near the bar, nursing a scotch he hadn't asked for and wouldn't drink. He never drank at these things, never let his guard slip, while enduring the endless parade of congratulations. "Beautiful ceremony," said Councilman Rodriguez, a man whose vote Dante had purchased 3 times over. "Your bride is stunning." "The Voss family has good genes," replied Senator Harrigan, her smile as plastic as her face. "I'm sure your children will be remarkable." Carlo Benedetti, head of a rival family that was slowly being absorbed into Dante's empire, clapped him on the shoulder with false warmth. "You're a lucky man, Moretti. That girl's a prize." Dante smiled the way a shark smiled, all teeth and no humor. "I appreciate your well wishes, Carlo. How's the construction business treating you?" The barely veiled threat landed. Carlo's building contracts existed at Dante's pleasure, and everyone knew it. The older man's smile froze, and he excused himself quickly. Across the ballroom, Alara sat at the bride's table, untouched plate of food in front of her, accepting congratulations with the mechanical grace of a well-programmed machine. "Smile." "Thank you." "Yes, we're very happy." "Smile." "Thank you." She hadn't eaten anything, hadn't drunk anything either, though champagne flutes kept appearing at her elbow. "She's beautiful, boss." Marco materialized at Dante's side, his eyes scanning the crowd even as he spoke. His underboss was built like a tank and had the personality of one, blunt, effective, loyal to the point of stupidity. Quiet, though. Barely said 2 words during the photos. "She's overwhelmed," Dante said, though he wasn't sure why he was making excuses for her. "This is a lot." "If you say so." Marco didn't sound convinced. "Security's tight. Benedetti brought 4 guys. I got eyes on all of them. The Russos sent flowers, but nobody showed, which is probably smart on their part. Oh, and Vincent Caruso's here." Dante's expression didn't change, but his fingers tightened fractionally on his glass. "Where?" "Near the terrace. Been here about 20 minutes. Keeps watching your bride." Vincent Caruso. Real estate developer, art collector, philanthropist. Also one of the most connected men in the city, with fingers in legitimate business and less legitimate ventures that even Dante couldn't fully map. They'd done business before. Mutual benefit, careful respect, the kind of détente that kept violence at bay. But Vincent was ambitious, and he collected things, beautiful things. "Keep him in sight," Dante said quietly. "Don't approach unless he makes a move." Marco nodded and melted back into the crowd. The dancing started. Tradition demanded the first dance go to the bride and groom. Dante crossed the ballroom toward Alara, aware of every eye tracking his movement. She saw him coming and stood, smoothing her dress with trembling hands. "Shall we?" He offered his arm. She took it without a word, and he led her to the center of the floor. The quartet shifted into something classical and romantic that his wedding planner had probably chosen. Dante placed one hand on Alara's waist, took her hand with the other. She flinched. It was subtle, a barely perceptible tension, a fractional pulling away, but unmistakable. Her hand in his was rigid, her body held at the maximum distance the dance allowed. They began to move. She knew the steps, executed them perfectly, but there was no fluidity in her movements. She was counting beats in her head, following a pattern, making sure she didn't mess up. "Relax," he murmured. "This is supposed to look natural." I'm sorry. The words came out automatically, almost reflexive. I'm trying. I'm not criticizing you, just observation. She didn't respond, just kept her eyes fixed on his shoulder, avoiding his gaze. This close, he could smell her perfume, something expensive and floral that didn't suit her. Could see the pulse hammering in her throat, could see the way her breathing remained shallow and controlled. Are you afraid of me? He asked quietly, keeping his voice low enough that only she could hear. Her eyes flickered up to his face for just a second before dropping again. Should I be? That wasn't an answer. I don't beat women, if that's your concern. How progressive. There was something sharp in her tone, just for a moment, before it smoothed back into that careful neutrality. So she had some fire in her after all. Interesting. The song ended. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Dante released her, and she immediately stepped back, putting space between them. You should eat something, he said. Long night ahead. Her face went carefully blank. Of course. She turned and walked back to the table, spine straight, steps measured. Dante watched her go, that nagging sense of something wrong growing stronger. Victor Voss appeared at his elbow, reeking of gin and desperation poorly masked by expensive cologne. Dante, my son-in-law! Too loud, too jovial. Beautiful ceremony, wasn't it? My little girl looked perfect. She did, Dante agreed, watching Victor carefully. The older man's face was flushed, his eyes slightly unfocused, drunk, but trying to hide it. I want to thank you, Victor continued, gripping Dante's arm with sweaty fingers, for this arrangement, for helping my family. You're a good man, Dante. A good man. Dante wasn't a good man, and Victor knew it. This was the desperation of someone who'd sold his daughter to save himself and needed to justify it. The arrangement benefits us both, Dante said neutrally, removing Victor's hand from his arm. Your shipping routes, my distribution network? It's good business. Yes, of course, business. Victor swallowed hard. But Ilara, you'll take care of her, won't you? She's a good girl, obedient, well-trained. She won't give you any trouble. Well-trained. The phrase stuck in Dante's mind like a splinter. You train dogs, not daughters. I'm sure she'll be an excellent wife, Dante said, keeping his expression neutral, even as his instincts prickled. If you'll excuse me, I should make the rounds. He moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations, making small talk, all while his mind worked through the pieces that didn't fit. Ilara's fear. Victor's word choices. That flinch when Dante had touched her waist. The bruise he'd seen just for a second when her dress shifted, high on her ribs where it would normally be hidden. Fresh bruising. Purple-yellow, maybe 3 or 4 days old. Dante Moretti. The voice was smooth, cultured, with an accent that spoke of old European money. Congratulations are in order. Dante turned to find Vincent Caruso standing there, impeccably dressed in a Tom Ford suit, his silver hair perfectly styled, his smile warm and completely false. He was in his 50s, handsome in the way of men who spent fortunes maintaining their appearance, with the kind of charisma that made people forget he'd destroyed lives to build his empire. Vincent. I wasn't sure you'd come. Dante kept his tone pleasant, his body language relaxed, even as every instinct went on alert. I wouldn't miss it. The Moretti family expanding through such a elegant arrangement. Vincent's eyes drifted across the ballroom to where Ilara sat. Your bride is exquisite. The Voss family has excellent taste. Something in the way Vincent looked at Ilara made Dante's blood run cold. It was the look of a man assessing property, of someone who recognized something familiar, of ownership. She is beautiful, Dante agreed carefully. I'm a fortunate man. Indeed. But Vincent's smile widened slightly. I've known the Voss family for years, lovely people. I was actually supposed to attend Victor's birthday party last week, but business kept me away. I'm sure it was a wonderful celebration. Last week, when those bruises on Ilara's ribs would have been fresh. Dante's mind raced, connecting dots he didn't want to connect. Vincent's connection to the Voss family, Victor's gambling debts, some of them held by companies Vincent controlled through intermediaries. The way Ilara had reacted to being touched. No, he was reading too much into this, paranoid from years of seeing threats everywhere. I'm sure it was, Dante said neutrally, though I wasn't invited. Of course not. This was before the engagement was finalized. Vincent's eyes finally left Alara and returned to Dante. But now you're family. That changes everything, doesn't it? Family is so important. The way he said family made it sound like a threat. It is, Dante agreed. If you'll excuse me, Vincent, I should attend to my bride. Naturally. Congratulations again, Dante. I'm sure you'll be very happy together. Vincent's smile never wavered as he turned and walked away, melting into the crowd. Dante watched him go, every instinct screaming that he'd just missed something important. The reception dragged on. More dancing, more speeches, more false congratulations. Through it all, Alara played her part perfectly. The gracious bride, the beautiful ornament, the prize won. She smiled when required, accepted well wishes with appropriate gratitude, and never once let that mask slip. But Dante was watching now. Really watching. The way she positioned herself in any group so that she could see all the exits. The way she never fully turned her back to a room. The way her eyes tracked Vincent Caruso whenever he moved, that careful, blank expression flickering for just a moment into something that looked like terror. The way she avoided being alone with her own father. By the time they left for the hotel, Dante's mind was churning through scenarios he didn't want to consider. The presidential suite at the Fitzgerald was obscene. 3 bedrooms, full kitchen, living room with views of the city skyline, bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in. Dante barely registered the luxury. He'd stayed in places like this his whole life. It was just another gilded cage, just nicer than most. Alara stood in the center of the living room, still in her wedding dress, looking small and lost despite the grandeur surrounding her. "You can take the master bedroom," Dante said, shrugging off his jacket and loosening his tie. "I'll take one of the others." She blinked, confusion flickering across her face. "I thought, we'll handle the legal requirements later. You're exhausted. Get some rest." For the first time all day, something genuine crossed her expression. Relief, quickly masked. "Thank you." She disappeared into the master suite. Dante heard the lock click. She'd locked the door. Against him. Her husband. He stood there for a long moment, staring at that closed door, his mind working through everything he'd observed. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed Marco. "Yeah, boss?" "I need everything you can find on Vincent Caruso's relationship with the Voss family. Specifically the last 6 months. Financial transactions, meetings, everything." "Caruso, why?" "Just do it. Quietly. I don't want anyone knowing we're looking." "You got it. Anything else?" Dante hesitated. "Find out what happened at Victor Voss's birthday party last week. Who attended? Any incidents? Anything unusual?" "On it, boss. Is everything okay?" "I don't know yet," Dante said quietly. "That's the problem." He ended the call and walked to the window, staring out at the city he controlled. Somewhere down there, in one of those buildings, someone had hurt his wife, had put bruises on her skin and terror in her eyes. And if his suspicions were correct, that someone was connected enough and powerful enough that the Voss family had handed Alara over rather than fight back. Dante didn't do protective, didn't do emotional, didn't do anything that wasn't calculated for maximum benefit. But he also didn't tolerate anyone damaging his property. And as of this morning, Alara Voss was his. The thought sat wrong in his mind even as he had it. She wasn't property. She was a person, one who'd been hurt badly enough that she locked herself in a bedroom on her wedding night. From behind the master bedroom door, he heard water running. Then, faintly, the sound of crying. Not sobbing, not loud grief, just quiet, exhausted tears from someone who'd been holding everything together all day and had finally hit the breaking point. Dante stood at that window until the crying stopped and the suite fell silent. Then he poured himself a drink, actually drank it this time, and sat in the darkness, thinking about bruises and fear and the way Vincent Caruso had looked at his wife. Tomorrow, he told himself. Tomorrow, he'd get answers. Tonight, he'd let her cry. Morning came too early. Dante had barely slept, his mind working through scenarios and contingencies. By 6 a.m., he'd already received 3 texts from Marco, initial findings that made his blood run cold. Vincent Caruso had been at Victor Voss's birthday party. So had Alara. The event had lasted until after midnight. Vincent had left around 1 a.m. Alara had been seen leaving her father's study around the same time, walking carefully as if injured. 3 days later, the engagement to Dante had been finalized. The master bedroom door opened. Alara emerged in simple clothes, jeans and a sweater that probably cost $1,000 but looked modest enough. Her face was carefully made up, hiding whatever tears had fallen the night before. Her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail. She looked like a college student, young, vulnerable, breakable. "Good morning," she said quietly. "I wasn't sure what time you wanted to leave. We need to talk first." Dante gestured to the sofa. "Sit." He watched the way she tensed at the command, the way her breathing shifted, the way she positioned herself on the very edge of the cushion with her hands folded in her lap, ready to run, ready to appease, ready to endure. "I'm going to ask you some questions," Dante said, keeping his voice level and non-threatening. "You don't have to answer them, but I need you to understand that whatever you tell me stays between us. I'm not going to hurt you, and I'm not going to tell your father." She stared at him, searching his face for the trap. "Why?" "Because someone already has hurt you, and I need to know who." The color drained from her face. "I don't know what—" "The bruises on your ribs, the way you flinch when touched, the fact that you locked yourself in the bedroom last night." Dante leaned forward slightly. "I'm not stupid, Alara, and I'm not blind." She was shaking now, her hands gripping each other so tightly her knuckles went white. "Please don't. Who was it?" "I can't. If I tell you—" Her voice broke. "Who was it?" The words came out as a whisper, so quiet he almost didn't hear them. "Vincent Caruso." Everything clicked into place with sickening clarity. Victor's debts, Vincent's connections, the timing of the engagement, the way her father had sold her to save himself, not just through this marriage, but before, in ways Dante was only beginning to understand. "How long?" His voice came out rougher than he intended. "Since I was 22. She wouldn't look at him. "My father owed him money. Vincent said he'd forgive the debt if I was nice to him. Companionship, he called it. Dinner dates, art gallery openings. He said it was innocent. But it wasn't. No." The word was barely audible. "It wasn't." Dante's hands curled into fists. He forced them to relax, forced his expression to remain neutral, even as rage built in his chest. "And your father knew." "My father arranged it." She laughed, and the sound was broken. "He told me it was my duty to the family, that Vincent was a powerful man and we needed his favor, that I should be grateful for the attention." The bruises. Last week, at my father's birthday party, Vincent was angry because I'd mentioned the engagement. He thought I'd gone behind his back, that I was trying to escape. Her voice had gone flat, reciting facts like a police report. "He took me to my father's study. He wanted to make sure I understood that marriage wouldn't change anything, that you'd get tired of me eventually, and then I'd come back to him where I belonged." Dante had killed men for less, had destroyed entire organizations over smaller slights. But this was different. This was calculated, prolonged cruelty against someone who'd had no power to fight back. "Does anyone else know?" "My mother suspected, I think, before she died, but she never said anything." Alara's hands were still trembling. "My father knows. He's always known. And Vincent has enough leverage over him that speaking up was never an option. And when you married me, I thought maybe it would stop, that being your wife would give me some protection." She finally looked up at him, and her eyes were hollow. "But last night, when you said we'd handle the legal requirements later, I realized you didn't even want me. This is just business for you too, and Vincent was right. Eventually you'll lose interest, and then—" "No." The word came out harder than Dante intended. "That's not how this works." She flinched, and he cursed himself. "Look at me, Alara." He waited until she met his eyes. "I don't care what Vincent Caruso thinks he owns. I don't care what arrangement your father made. You're my wife now. That means you're under my protection. And nobody touches what's mine. You don't understand. Vincent is powerful, connected, dangerous." Dante's smile was cold. "So am I. And unlike your father, I don't fold when pressured. He'll retaliate. He has connections with the Benedetti family, with the Port Authority, with... I know exactly who Vincent Caruso is and what he controls. But Dante pulled out his phone and sent a quick text to Luca, his consigliere. And by the end of the day, I'll know every single leverage point he has, every debt, every connection, every dirty secret. You can't fight him. He's too... Ilara. He waited until she stopped talking. I've built an empire by destroying men more powerful than Vincent Caruso. The only reason I haven't moved on him before is because we had an understanding. He stayed in his lane, I stayed in mine. But he crossed a line when he put his hands on you. I'm not worth starting a war over. The statement was so matter-of-fact, so believed, that it stopped Dante cold. She actually believed that, believed she was disposable, believed she deserved what had been done to her. Here's what's going to happen, Dante said quietly. You're going to move into my home. You're going to have security, discreet but constant. You're not going to be alone with Vincent Caruso, your father, or anyone else I haven't personally vetted. And you're going to tell me everything, every interaction, every threat, every single thing Vincent has done. Why? Her voice was small. Why would you do this? Because somewhere in the last 12 hours, this had stopped being business. Because he'd looked into her eyes and seen something that reminded him of his sister before she'd overdosed on drugs sold by men just like him. Before she'd died alone in a hotel room while their father counted money and pretended family didn't matter. Because he was a bastard and a criminal and probably going to hell. But there were some lines even he wouldn't cross. Because she'd locked herself in a bedroom and cried, and he'd stood outside that door feeling something uncomfortably close to guilt. Because you're my wife, he said simply, and in my world, that means something. She studied his face for a long moment, clearly trying to determine if this was real or just another cage with prettier bars. Okay, she finally whispered. Okay. Dante stood. Get your things. We're leaving in 30 minutes. Where are we going? Home. He paused at the door. And Ilara? Vincent Caruso is never touching you again. That's not a promise. It's a fact. He left her there and walked into the bedroom he'd used, pulling out his phone. The texts to Marco and Luca were brief and to the point. I need everything on Vincent Caruso. Financial records, property holdings, criminal associates, legitimate business connections, personal life, everything. 24 hours. Also, put a security detail on my wife. Best guys we have. Tell them she's not to be alone with anyone I haven't approved. No exceptions. And find me everything Victor Voss owes to anyone. Every debt, every favor, every piece of leverage anyone has on that family. The responses came back within seconds. Marco. On it. How deep do we go? Deep enough to bury him. Luca. This about last night? This is about a lot of things. Move fast. And Luca? Keep this quiet. I don't want anyone knowing we're looking. He pocketed the phone and stared at his reflection in the mirror. The man looking back at him was one he recognized. Cold, calculating, dangerous. But there was something else there now. Something he hadn't seen in years. Purpose beyond profit. He thought about Ilara sitting in that living room, believing she wasn't worth fighting for. About Vincent Caruso thinking he could hurt her without consequences. About Victor Voss selling his daughter to save himself. Dante Moretti had built his empire on violence and fear. He'd destroyed competitors, eliminated threats, and ruled his territory with absolute control. But he'd never had a crusade before. He smiled at his reflection, and it wasn't pleasant. Vincent Caruso had made a mistake. He'd hurt someone under Dante's protection, even if neither of them had known it at the time. And Dante Moretti never forgot a debt. This wasn't going to be quick. It wasn't going to be clean. And it sure as hell wasn't going to be business. This was going to be personal. And when Dante made things personal, people disappeared. The drive back to the estate was quiet. Ilara sat in the back of the SUV, staring out the window while Dante made calls and sent messages, building the framework of what would come next. Marco drove, his eyes constantly checking mirrors, assessing threats with the paranoia that kept him alive. The Moretti estate sat on 15 acres outside the city, surrounded by walls that looked decorative but were reinforced steel, monitored by cameras that fed to a security room staffed 24 hours a day. The house itself was modern, all glass and clean lines, expensive in the way of things that didn't need to announce their value. Dante had bought it 3 years ago, right after his father died. The old man had lived in a Victorian monstrosity in the city, dark and oppressive, filled with memories of violence and disappointment. Dante had sold it within a week of the funeral. This place was his. Clean, controlled, safe. Alara stared up at it as they pulled through the gates. It's beautiful. It's secure, Dante corrected. The beauty is secondary. Maria, his housekeeper, met them at the door. A woman in her 60s who'd worked for the Moretti family since before Dante was born. She knew exactly what he was and had never judged him for it, which made her more valuable than most of his enforcers. Mrs. Moretti, Maria smiled warmly at Alara. Welcome home. I've prepared the West Wing for you. I thought you might prefer your own space to settle in. Alara glanced at Dante, uncertainty flickering across her face. Whatever makes you comfortable, he said. This is your home now. You're not a prisoner. Maria showed Alara upstairs while Dante headed to his office. Within minutes, both Marco and Luca arrived, closing the door behind them. Talk, Dante said. Marco pulled out a tablet. Vincent Caruso. Real estate development through Caruso Holdings, art gallery on Fifth Avenue, sits on the board of 3 museums and 2 hospitals, clean on the surface. Underneath, he swiped through files. Money laundering through art sales, ties to the Benedetti family through his cousin's marriage, suspected involvement in human trafficking though nothing proven, and enough political connections to make him nearly untouchable. Nearly, Dante repeated. Nobody's completely clean, Luca added. The consigliere was in his 50s, lean and sharp-eyed, with the kind of mind that saw connections others missed. Caruso's been smart. He keeps his distance from direct criminal activity, uses intermediaries, maintains plausible deniability, but he's got weak points. Show me. Luca spread several documents across the desk. His real estate empire is leveraged. He's cash-rich but asset-poor. Most of his properties are mortgaged to the hilt. He's been using short-term loans to cover long-term obligations, betting on development projects coming through. If those projects fail, his whole empire collapses. Can we make them fail? 3 of his major developments need city permits that haven't been approved yet. We own enough councilmen to block those approvals. Luca smiled thinly. It would take time, but we could strangle his cash flow. Do it. What else? Marco swiped to another file. Victor Voss owes Caruso $1.2 million. The debt's been ongoing for 5 years, renewed annually. No regular payments, just ongoing obligation. In exchange for access to his daughter, Dante said flatly. Both men went still. Boss? Marco's voice was carefully neutral. Dante told them. Everything Alara had revealed that morning. By the time he finished, Marco looked ready to kill someone, and Luca's expression had gone cold and calculating. This changes things, Luca said quietly. If Caruso's been abusing the Voss girl, your wife, we can't just hit him financially. He'll retaliate against her. He'll try, Dante corrected. Which is why she doesn't leave this property without security, which is why we move carefully, and which is why when we finally move on Caruso, he doesn't see it coming until it's too late. You want him destroyed, Marco said. Not a question. I want him erased. But slowly, I want him to watch everything he's built crumble. I want him to know exactly why it's happening. Dante leaned back in his chair. He thought he could hurt her without consequences. I'm going to show him what consequences look like. Luca nodded slowly. This is going to take resources. Time. We'll have to move against the Benedettis too, probably. Caruso will run to them for protection. Then we make sure the Benedettis can't help him. Carlo's already weak. Half his territory is ours in everything but name. We just make it official. War, Marco said. Consolidation, Dante corrected. We've been moving toward absorbing the Benedetti operations anyway. We just accelerate the timeline. And Victor Voss? Luca asked. Good question. The man had sold his daughter, had enabled her abuse for years, deserved exactly what Caruso deserved, but he was also Alara's father. And destroying him completely might hurt her more than it helped. Victor's debt to Caruso gets transferred to me, Dante said after a moment. Along with all his other obligations, we buy him out, take over the shipping operation completely, and cut off his access to Alara. He might object, Luca noted. He won't have a choice, and if he does object, Dante's smile was cold. Well, I'm sure we can find leverage. The man's a degenerate gambler with enough skeletons to fill a cemetery. Leverage won't be hard. They spent the next 2 hours going through details. Every connection Caruso had, every asset, every relationship, building a map of his empire so they knew exactly where to strike. By the time Marco and Luca left, Dante had a plan. Not complete, that would take weeks to develop fully, but enough to start moving pieces. He found Alara in the West Wing, standing at the window of what would be her bedroom. The space was large and bright, decorated in soft neutrals that Maria had probably chosen to be soothing. "Is this acceptable?" he asked from the doorway. She turned, and he saw she'd been crying again. "It's beautiful. More than I expected." "What did you expect?" "Honestly, I don't know. Maybe something—" She trailed off. "More prison-like?" he finished for her. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "Something like that." Dante stepped into the room, careful to keep distance between them, not crowding her. "I meant what I said this morning. You're not a prisoner here. You want to redecorate, hire someone. You want to go out, tell security, and they'll accompany you. You want privacy? You've got it. The only restrictions are for your safety." "Why are you doing this?" The question was genuine, confused. "You barely know me. This marriage was just business. Why care about—" She gestured vaguely at herself. "This?" Because his sister had died alone and afraid, and no one had protected her. Because he'd spent his whole life building power, and what was it worth if he couldn't use it to fix something this broken? Because Alara had sat across from him that morning and believed she wasn't worth fighting for, and that belief made him irrationally, dangerously angry. "Because you're my wife," he said simply. It was easier than explaining the rest. "And because what was done to you was wrong. Simple as that." She searched his face, looking for the lie, the ulterior motive. He let her look. "Okay," she finally said. "I don't understand it, but okay." "You don't have to understand it. You just have to trust that I mean what I say." He turned to leave, then paused. "Dinner's at 7. Maria will show you the dining room. You don't have to come if you'd rather eat up here." "I'll come," she said quickly. Then, quieter. "If that's okay?" "It's fine." He left before the conversation could get more complicated. That night, Alara came to dinner in a simple dress, her hair down, minimal makeup. She looked younger without all the armor she'd worn at the wedding. Vulnerable. They ate mostly in silence, the only sound the clink of silverware against plates. Dante had never been much for conversation during meals. Too many years of business dinners where every word was calculated, every silence pregnant with threat. But this silence felt different. Companionable, almost. "The food is excellent," Alara said quietly. "Please thank Maria for me." "You can thank her yourself. She'll be around tomorrow morning." "What happens now?" The question came out of nowhere. "With everything?" "Now I handle Vincent Caruso," Dante said. "And you focus on settling in here, getting comfortable, maybe even relaxing if that's possible." "I don't know how to relax." She said it like a confession. "Then learn. You've got time." She set down her fork, and he saw her hands were shaking slightly. "He's going to come after me. When he realizes I told you—" "He's going to try," Dante corrected. "And he's going to fail. Do you know why?" She shook her head. "Because I don't lose, Alara. Not ever. And especially not to men like Vincent Caruso." He leaned forward slightly. "You spent years being afraid because you had no power, no resources. No one willing to protect you. That's changed now. You've got me, and my resources, and my protection, which means Vincent's reign of terror is over." "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple. It's going to be messy and complicated and probably more violent than you want to know about." He held her gaze. "But it's happening. The only question is whether you can live with that." She thought about it for a long moment. "I think," she said slowly, "that I can live with a lot of things if it means never having to see him again." "Then we understand each other." Later, after she'd gone back to the West Wing and Dante was alone in his office reviewing Marco's latest reports, his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. "Yeah." Dante. Vincent Caruso's smooth voice came through the line. I hope I'm not interrupting your honeymoon. Every muscle in Dante's body went tense. What do you want, Vincent? Just calling to extend my congratulations again. Your bride is lovely, truly exceptional. A pause. I hope you're taking good care of her. The threat was clear, unsubtle. Vincent wanted Dante to know he was watching. Elara is fine, Dante said neutrally. Was there something else? I was hoping we might have lunch this week, discuss some business opportunities. I have some proposals that might interest you. Translation. Vincent wanted to establish that his arrangement with Elara would continue despite the marriage. I'll have my assistant check my schedule, Dante said. Might be a few weeks. I'm busy consolidating some new acquisitions. He heard Vincent's pause, the slight change in breathing that meant the man had caught the implied threat. Dante was moving on his territory. I see, Vincent said carefully. Well, I wouldn't want to interfere with business, though some acquisitions can be delicate. It's important to understand all existing arrangements before making moves. I'm very thorough, Vincent. I always research my investments completely. Another pause. Then, of course. Well, do send my regards to your wife. I'm sure she's settling in beautifully. The call ended. Dante sat in the darkness of his office, staring at the phone. Vincent had just confirmed everything Elara had told him. The arrogance, the assumption of continued access, the barely veiled threat. He texted Marco. Increase security on the house, and I want eyes on Vincent Caruso 24/7. Where he goes, who he meets, everything. Then he texted Luca. We move faster. I want Caruso's permits blocked by end of week. Finally, he walked upstairs to the west wing. Elara's door was closed, a thin line of light visible underneath. He stood outside for a moment, then knocked softly. Come in. She was sitting up in bed, a book in her lap, looking small in the oversized space. Is everything okay? Vincent called. Wanted to congratulate us. He watched her face go pale. He's testing boundaries, seeing if the marriage changes anything. What did you tell him? That you're fine. That I'm busy. That he should send his regards. Dante leaned against the doorframe. He thinks he still has access to you. That eventually I'll lose interest and things will go back to how they were. Will they? Her voice was small. No. He said it with absolute certainty. But he doesn't know that yet, which gives us an advantage. She closed the book. I heard you on the phone earlier. You're moving against him. I am. He'll fight back. Let him. Dante pushed off the doorframe. Get some rest. Tomorrow, you're meeting with security. They'll go over protocols, emergency procedures, all the boring but necessary stuff. Dante? She stopped him before he could leave. Thank you. I know I'm making your life complicated. He looked at her, this broken, brave woman who'd survived years of abuse and still managed to say thank you, who locked herself in bedrooms and cried quietly so no one would hear, who believed she wasn't worth fighting for. You're not making anything complicated, Elara. You're just giving me a reason to do something I should have done years ago. He met her eyes. Sleep well. You're safe here. He closed the door softly and walked back to his office, already planning his next moves. Vincent Caruso thought he'd won, thought he'd broken Elara so completely that she'd never fight back, thought Dante was just another man who'd use her and discard her. He was about to learn how wrong he was, and by the time Dante was done, Vincent would wish he'd never laid eyes on Elara Voss. This wasn't business anymore. This was war. The first week passed in a strange rhythm that Elara couldn't quite name. She woke each morning in sheets that cost more than her childhood bedroom furniture, ate breakfast prepared by a housekeeper who smiled at her like she mattered, and spent her days learning the layout of a prison that didn't feel like one. Because that's what it was, wasn't it? A prettier cage. Better furnished, certainly. The bars were invisible, replaced by security cameras and men in dark suits who appeared whenever she approached the gates. But still a cage. Except Dante kept leaving the door open. You can go into the city if you want, he'd said on the third day, barely looking up from his laptop. Just take Marco or one of the other guys with you. She'd stared at him, waiting for the catch. There was always a catch. I don't need anything, she'd said finally. I didn't ask if you needed anything. I said you can go if you want. He'd glanced up then, his dark eyes unreadable. You're not a prisoner, Alara. How many times do I have to say it? She didn't have an answer for that. Didn't know how to reconcile the man who'd built an empire on violence with the one who made sure Maria kept her favorite tea stocked without being asked. On the fourth day, she'd ventured down to his office. The door was open, and Dante sat behind a massive desk covered in papers and multiple computer screens, talking rapid-fire Italian into his phone. When he saw her hovering in the doorway, he'd held up one finger, finished the conversation, then hung up. Problem? He'd asked. I didn't mean to interrupt. You didn't. What do you need? Such a simple question. What did she need? She'd spent 4 years being told what she needed, what she wanted, what she should feel. The question felt foreign. I was wondering if there's a library or books. Somewhere. Dante had stood, walked past her into the hallway, and gestured for her to follow. 2 doors down from his office, he'd opened a room she hadn't explored yet. Floor-to-ceiling shelves, thousands of books, a window seat with cushions, a ladder on rails to reach the upper shelves. It was here when I bought the place, he'd said. Previous owner was some tech billionaire who wanted to look cultured. I kept it because it seemed wasteful to tear it out. He'd paused. You read? I used to, before... She'd caught herself. Before Vincent. He'd said the name like a curse. Well, you can again now. Take whatever you want. He'd left her there, and she'd stood in that room for 20 minutes, running her fingers along spines, relearning the simple pleasure of choosing something for herself. Now it was day 7, and Alara sat in that library with a novel she'd started 3 times and couldn't focus on. Through the window, she could see Marco and another guard, Tony, she'd learned, doing perimeter checks. Beyond the walls, the city sprawled in the distance, and somewhere in that concrete maze, Vincent was still out there, still breathing, still free, still powerful. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I hope married life is treating you well. We should have lunch soon. Catch up. V. Her hands shook so badly the phone nearly slipped from her grip. He'd gotten her new number. Dante had given her a new phone, new number, told her it was secure, but Vincent had found her anyway. She was halfway to Dante's office before she realized she was running. He looked up when she burst through the door, his expression shifting from annoyance at the interruption to sharp focus when he saw her face. What happened? She thrust the phone at him, unable to speak. Dante read the message, and something dangerous flickered across his features. He stood, walked to his desk, and pressed a button on his phone. Luca, get in here. Then to someone else. Marco, office, now. Both men appeared within 2 minutes. Dante showed them the phone. How the hell did he get this number? Marco's face had gone red. This line's supposed to be clean. Clearly it's not. Oh, Luca was already typing on his laptop. Let me trace. Don't bother, Dante interrupted. He used a burner. He's not stupid. He turned to Alara. When did this come through? Just now, maybe 5 minutes ago. And this is the first contact since the wedding? She nodded, not trusting her voice. Dante's jaw tightened. Luca, I want Alara's number changed within the hour. Marco, increase the security detail. I want eyes on every entrance to this property. Boss, we've already got... I don't care what we've got. Double it. Dante's voice had gone cold. Vincent's making a move. This is him testing our response time. Alara found her voice. He's trying to remind me that marriage doesn't change anything, that he can still reach me whenever he wants. He's miscalculated then, Dante said flatly. Because all he's done is give me justification to accelerate our timeline. He looked at Luca. The permits? Blocked as of yesterday. 3 major developments dead in the water. Caruso's scrambling for alternate funding, but his banks are getting nervous. Good. What about the Benedetti connection? Carlo's agreeable to a meeting. He knows which way the wind's blowing. Luca smiled thinly. He's ready to discuss terms. Alara watched this exchange, piecing together implications. You're cutting Vincent off from his allies. I'm cutting him off from everything, Dante corrected. His money, his connections, his power base. By the time I'm done, he'll have nothing left. He won't just accept that, he'll fight back. Let him. Dante handed her phone back. Don't respond to that message. Don't engage. If he contacts you again, come to me immediately. Okay, she hesitated. What happens when he realizes what you're doing? Then things get interesting. He caught her expression. You're worried. Of course I'm worried. You're starting a war because of me. I'm finishing something that should have ended years ago, Dante said. Vincent's been operating unchecked for too long. This was inevitable. Marco cleared his throat. Boss, if we're moving on Caruso directly, we need to consider collateral damage. He's got relationships with, I know who he has relationships with. Document everyone. Anyone who's enabled him, anyone who's looked the other way, anyone who's profited from his operations. Dante's eyes were cold. They all go down with him. After Marco and Luca left, Elara remained standing in the doorway. Dante had returned to his desk, already back to whatever he'd been working on before her interruption. I'm sorry, she said quietly. He looked up. For what? For bringing this into your life, for complicating things, for... Stop. He stood, walked around the desk. Vincent Caruso has been a problem in this city for 15 years. He's hurt people, destroyed lives, and hidden behind legitimacy while doing it. You didn't create this situation. You're just the catalyst that's forcing me to deal with it. That's a very diplomatic way of saying I'm trouble. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. You're not trouble. You're just complicated. Is there a difference? Trouble is a choice. Complicated is circumstance. He studied her face. You didn't choose any of this. Vincent made choices. Your father made choices. I'm making choices. But you? You're just trying to survive. The words hit harder than they should have. For 4 years, Vincent had told her she'd brought it on herself, that she'd been too pretty, too available, too much of a temptation, that her father's debts were her responsibility to pay. Hearing someone say otherwise felt like oxygen after drowning. Thank you, she managed. Don't thank me yet. This gets uglier before it gets better. He was right. 2 days later, Victor Voss showed up at the gates. Elara was in the library when Maria appeared in the doorway, wringing her hands. Mrs. Moretti, your father is here. He's demanding to see you. Every muscle in Elara's body went rigid. Where's Dante? In meetings downtown. Mr. Marco is handling your father, but tell him I'm not available. The words came out harder than intended. He's insisting. He says it's urgent family business. Family business. As if Victor had ever treated her like family instead of a commodity. Elara stood, smoothed her shirt, and forced her voice level. Tell Marco I'll see him, in the foyer, with security present. Maria hesitated, then nodded and disappeared. By the time Elara made it downstairs, her father was pacing the marble entryway, his face flushed and sweating despite the cool air. Marco stood nearby, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Elara! Victor rushed toward her. Finally, we need to talk, privately. We can talk here. She stayed near the staircase, maintaining distance. This is family business, personal. We need privacy. No. The word hung in the air. Victor blinked, clearly not expecting resistance. Excuse me? I said no. Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of Marco. Victor's face darkened. Don't you take that tone with me, young lady. I'm your father. You sold me to pay your debts, Elara said, her voice surprisingly steady. You stopped being my father when you handed me to Vincent Caruso like property. So no, we're not having a private conversation. You ungrateful! Victor caught himself, glanced at Marco, then tried a different approach. Look, I understand you're upset, but I'm in trouble, sweetheart. Real trouble. I need your help. What kind of trouble? Vincent, he's calling in my debt. All of it. Says the marriage changed our arrangement and he wants full payment immediately. Victor's hand shook. 1.2 million. I don't have it, Elara. If I don't pay, he'll what? She kept her voice flat. Hurt you? Kill you? Seems like you should have thought about that before you made deals with him. Please, you have to talk to Dante. He can help. He has the money. He can what? Pay your debts? Why would he do that? Because you're his wife. Because that's what family does. The hypocrisy was staggering. You didn't act like family when you let Vincent abuse me for 4 years. You didn't act like family when you ignored my bruises and told me to be grateful for the attention. So don't stand there and talk to me about what family does." Victor's expression shifted, desperation giving way to something uglier. "You think you're safe now? You think marrying Dante Moretti changes anything? Vincent owns this city. He has connections you can't imagine. And when he decides he wants you back, and he will, your husband won't be able to stop him." Marco moved then, stepping between them. "Mr. Voss, I think it's time for you to leave. I'm talking to my daughter. Your daughter asked you to leave. I'm making sure you do." Marco's hand rested casually near his hip, where Alara knew he kept a gun. "Now." Victor looked between them, then back at Alara. "You're making a mistake. Vincent will retaliate. He'll hurt people. And when he does, their blood is on your hands." "Get out," Alara said. After the door closed behind him, she stood there shaking, adrenaline crashing through her system. Marco stayed quiet, giving her space to process. "I need to call Dante," she finally said. "Already texted him. He's on his way back." Dante arrived 20 minutes later, his expression thunderous. Alara told him everything: Victor's visit, the debt being called in, the threats. "He's panicking," Dante said after she finished. "Vincent's squeezing him, probably hoping Victor will pressure you into, what? Leaving me? Going back to him? I don't know. Maybe." Alara wrapped her arms around herself. "My father said Vincent has connections, that you can't protect me." "Your father's an idiot." Dante pulled out his phone, dialed. "Luca, Victor Voss's debt to Caruso. I want it bought, today. Every cent he owes, transfer it to our books." A pause. "I don't care what it costs. Just do it." He hung up and looked at Alara. "Your father's debt is now mine, which means Vincent has no leverage over him anymore." "But you just gave Vincent $1.2 million. I gave him a fraction of what I spend on ammunition in a month. Money's not the point." Dante's smile was sharp. "The point is control. Victor owes me now, not Vincent. Which means if Vincent wants to use your father as leverage, he's out of luck. My father will just find another way to screw this up. He always does." "Probably, but that's not your problem anymore." Dante's expression softened slightly. "You did good today, standing up to him. That took guts." "I was terrified." "Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway." He paused. "How are you? Really?" The question caught her off guard. Nobody asked her that. Nobody cared about the answer. "I don't know," she admitted. "Angry? Relieved? Guilty?" "Guilty for what?" "For dragging you into this mess, for causing problems with Vincent, for Alara." He waited until she met his eyes. "Stop taking responsibility for other people's choices. Victor chose to gamble. Vincent chose to be a predator. Those are their decisions, not yours." "But if I hadn't told you, then I'd still be moving against Vincent eventually. You just gave me a better reason to do it now." He checked his watch. "I have a meeting with Carlo Benedetti in an hour. We're finalizing terms for absorbing his operations." "That's part of your plan. Against Vincent?" "Vincent's cousin is married to Carlo's son. Family ties mean Carlo's been providing Vincent cover for years. Once Carlo's under my control, Vincent loses that protection." Alara processed this. "You're isolating him." "I'm dismantling his empire piece by piece. His money, his political connections, his family alliances. By the time I'm done, he'll be alone." Dante's eyes were cold. "And then I'll destroy what's left." "How long will this take?" "As long as it needs to. Could be weeks, could be months." He headed toward the door, then stopped. "But Alara, however long it takes, he's not touching you again. That's not negotiable." After he left, Alara sat in the foyer for a long time, trying to process everything. Her father showing up, desperate and pathetic. The revelation that Dante had bought his debt without hesitation. The systematic way Dante was taking apart Vincent's world. She should feel relieved, should feel grateful. Instead, she felt numb. Maria found her there an hour later. "Mrs. Moretti, would you like some tea?" "Actually, I'd like to go out." The words surprised her as much as they seemed to surprise Maria. Into the city. Can I do that? Of course. Let me call Tony. He can drive you. 30 minutes later, Ilara found herself in the back of an SUV, Tony at the wheel, heading into downtown. She hadn't planned where to go, hadn't thought beyond the sudden desperate need to be somewhere else. Anywhere in particular, Mrs. Moretti? Tony asked. The art district, she heard herself say. Just drop me off and I'll walk. Tony's expression suggested this was a terrible idea, but he didn't argue. He pulled over near Gallery Row, got out, and opened her door. I'll be right here. You need anything? You call me. Got it? Ilara nodded and started walking. The galleries were familiar territory. She'd spent hours here before Vincent, before everything went wrong. Back when she'd had dreams of maybe working in a museum, of studying art history, of having a life beyond being decorative. She wandered into the Morrison Gallery, a small space specializing in contemporary pieces. The current exhibition featured abstract paintings, all bold colors and chaotic energy. She stood in front of one, a canvas of reds and blacks that looked like violence and rage made visible. Powerful, isn't it? The voice came from behind her. Male, familiar. She turned and found Vincent Caruso standing there, impeccably dressed as always, his smile warm and his eyes dead. Every nerve in her body screamed at her to run. Hello, Ilara, he said pleasantly. Fancy meeting you here. Her phone was in her purse. Tony was outside. She could scream, could run, could... Relax, Vincent said, reading her panic. We're in public. I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to talk. I don't want to talk to you. I understand. You're angry with me. You have every right to be. He moved closer, and she forced herself not to step back. But we need to discuss your husband's recent activities. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Dante's been very busy. Blocking my permits, buying your father's debt, meeting with Carlo Benedetti. Vincent's smile thinned. He thinks he's being clever. Thinks he can move against me without consequences. I don't have anything to do with that. Of course you do. You're the reason he's doing it. Vincent's hand lifted, and Ilara flinched before she could stop herself. He noticed, and something ugly flickered in his expression. Still afraid of me. Good. You should be. Is there a problem here? Tony had appeared, his bulk filling the doorway. His hand was inside his jacket. On his gun, Ilara realized. Vincent's smile never wavered. No problem. Just catching up with an old friend. Mrs. Moretti, you ready to go? Tony kept his eyes on Vincent. Yes? She moved toward the door. Vincent's voice stopped her. Tell your husband that he's making a mistake. Tell him that some things in this city are bigger than his ambitions. Tell him that if he continues down this path, people will get hurt. She turned back. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Vincent's expression was pleasant, conversational. Dante's powerful, I'll give him that. But he's not invincible. And when he realizes he's bitten off more than he can chew, I'll still be here, waiting. Tony's hand tightened on his gun. We're leaving, now. In the SUV, Ilara's hand shook so badly she couldn't dial Dante's number. Tony did it for her, putting the phone on speaker. What's wrong? Dante answered on the first ring. Vincent was at the gallery, Ilara said, her voice steadier than she felt. He followed me. Where are you now? In the car with Tony. We're leaving. Bring her home, Dante told Tony. Don't stop anywhere. Then to Ilara. Are you hurt? No, he didn't touch me. He wanted me to give you a message. What message? She repeated Vincent's words. The threats. The warnings. Dante was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was cold enough to freeze. Okay, I'm handling this. Get home safe. We'll talk when I'm back. He hung up. Tony drove fast, checking mirrors constantly. I'm sorry, Mrs. Moretti. I should have come in with you. It's not your fault. I told you to wait outside. Boss isn't going to see it that way. He was right. When they pulled through the gates, Dante was already there, his expression thunderous. He pulled Ilara's door open before Tony had fully stopped. Tell me exactly what happened. She did, leaving nothing out. The gallery. Vincent's appearance, his words, The way he'd moved like he might touch her. Tony? Dante's voice was deadly quiet. I was monitoring from outside like protocol dictates for public spaces. The second I saw Caruso approach her, I moved in. Tony's jaw was tight. Permission to put a bullet in him, boss. Denied. For now. Dante turned back to Alara. Did anyone else see him approach you? I don't know. Maybe. There were other people in the gallery. Good. Witnesses. He pulled out his phone, started texting rapidly. This just became assault, harassment, stalking. He didn't actually do anything. He approached my wife without her consent in a public space after she'd made it clear she didn't want contact. That's harassment. Dante's smile was sharp. And unlike his other crimes, this one has witnesses. You're going to press charges? I'm going to bury him in legal problems while I finish destroying everything else. Criminal charges, civil suits, restraining orders, whatever sticks. He looked at Tony. Get statements from everyone who was in that gallery. I want names, contact information, everything. After Tony left, Dante guided Alara inside to his office and poured her a drink. She took it without asking what it was, just grateful for something to do with her shaking hands. I shouldn't have gone out, she said quietly. You have every right to go out. This is Vincent crossing lines, not you making mistakes. He sat across from her. But from now on, when you leave the property, you take 2 guards minimum. And you don't go anywhere alone, even if it's just walking between stores. That's gonna look... I don't care how it looks. Vincent just proved he's watching you, tracking you, which means the rules just changed. He said people would get hurt if you keep moving against him. People are already hurt. You're hurt. How many other women has he done this to, Alara? How many victims are out there who didn't have someone powerful enough to fight back? She hadn't thought about that. You think there are others? I know there are. Luca found 3 women who filed harassment complaints against Vincent over the last decade. All 3 complaints mysteriously disappeared. All 3 women left the city shortly after. Dante's expression was grim. Vincent's been doing this for years. You're just the first one who's in a position to do something about it. What happened to those women? We're trying to find out. Luca's got investigators tracking them down. He leaned forward. But that's not your burden to carry. Your job is to stay safe and let me handle this. I hate feeling helpless. You're not helpless. You're strategic. There's a difference. He stood. I need to make some calls. Stay in the house tonight. Tomorrow, we'll talk about better security protocols. He left her there with her drink and her thoughts. That night, Alara couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the encounter with Vincent, the way he'd smiled, the certainty in his voice when he'd said Dante wasn't invincible. Around 2 a.m., she gave up on sleep and went downstairs. The house was dark, except for the security lights, but she saw illumination coming from under Dante's office door. She knocked softly. Come in. He was at his desk, surrounded by papers and open laptop screens. He looked tired, the first time she'd seen him look anything less than perfectly composed. Can't sleep? He asked. No. You? Don't need much. He gestured to the chair. Sit if you want. She did, curling into the leather chair. What are you working on? Vincent's entire life. He turned one of the screens toward her. This is his real estate portfolio. Here's his art collection, including pieces that were reported stolen, but somehow ended up in his private gallery. These are his shell companies. This is his family tree, showing every connection to every important person in the city. You're building a map. I'm building a case. Multiple cases, actually. He pulled up another file. Financial fraud, money laundering, art theft. We've already got him on harassment and stalking. By the time I'm done, he'll be drowning in legal problems. Will it be enough? To put him away? Maybe. To destroy him completely? Dante's smile was cold. Definitely. And if he comes after you? After me? Then he's even stupider than I thought. He closed the laptop. Alara, I've been doing this my whole life. I know how to fight. I know how to win. And I know how to protect what's mine. I'm not... Yes, you are. He cut her off. You're my wife. That means something in my world. It means anyone who touches you answers to me. It means I don't stop until the threat is eliminated. It means Vincent Caruso just made the last mistake of his miserable life. The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it made her realize how much danger he was putting himself in. For her. Why are you really doing this? She asked quietly. And don't say it's just business. Don't say it's strategic. I need to know why you care. Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then, I had a sister, younger than me. My father's legitimate daughter from his second marriage. He stared at something beyond the windows. She was beautiful and kind and everything I wasn't. And when she was 19, she got involved with one of my father's associates. He seemed nice, charming, came from a good family. Alara waited. He hurt her, regularly, systematically. And she never told anyone because he convinced her it was normal, that she deserved it, that if she spoke up, he'd hurt our family. Dante's hands curled into fists. By the time I found out, she was so broken she couldn't see a way out. So she took pills. A lot of pills. I'm so sorry. I was at a meeting when it happened, making money, building power, being important. And while I was congratulating myself on my success, my sister was dying alone in a hotel room. He finally looked at her. I killed the man who hurt her, slowly, painfully, made sure he understood exactly why he was dying. Did it help? No, she was still dead. I was still too late. He stood, walked to the window. So when I see what Vincent did to you, what your father allowed, I see my sister. And I see another chance to be on time instead of too late. Alara felt tears building but refused to let them fall. I'm not your sister. No, you're not. You're stronger than she was. You survived years of what broke her in months. He turned to face her. But that doesn't mean you should have had to survive it. That doesn't mean the people who hurt you get to walk away. So this is about guilt, about making up for what you couldn't do for her. Maybe. He didn't deny it. Does that make it less valid? I don't know. I don't want to be someone's redemption project. You're not. You're someone who deserves justice. The fact that helping you also helps me deal with old ghosts? That's just efficient. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. I'm good at efficiency. Despite everything, she almost laughed. You're insane. Probably, but I'm insane with resources, which is better than being insane without them. He checked his watch. It's late. You should try to sleep. Will you? Eventually. He returned to his desk. I want to finish mapping Vincent's political connections first. She stood, started toward the door, then stopped. Dante, thank you for telling me about your sister. Her name was Sophia. He said it quietly. And she would have liked you. Alara left him there, working in the darkness, building the case that would destroy Vincent Caruso. And for the first time since her wedding night, she felt something that might have been hope. 3 weeks into the marriage, Alara woke to the sound of shouting. She grabbed her phone, 4:30 in the morning, and stumbled out of bed, heart hammering. The voices were coming from downstairs, muffled, but clearly angry. Male, multiple people. She cracked open her bedroom door and heard Dante's voice, cold and sharp as a knife. I don't care what he threatened. You don't move without my authorization. Ever. Boss, he had a gun on the wife's security detail. Then you call me. You don't engage. You sure as hell don't fire shots in a residential neighborhood. Alara's stomach dropped. She pulled on a robe and headed downstairs, her bare feet silent on the marble. The voices were coming from Dante's office, the door half open. Mrs. Moretti, you shouldn't... Maria appeared from somewhere, anxiety written across her features. What happened? I don't know the details, just that there was some trouble earlier. Mr. Moretti's handling it. Alara pushed past her and into the office doorway. Dante stood behind his desk, still in the clothes he'd worn yesterday, looking like he hadn't slept. Marco was there, along with 2 other men she recognized as part of the security team. One of them had blood on his shirt. Everyone turned when she appeared. Alara! Dante's expression shifted from fury to something more controlled. Go back upstairs. What happened? Is someone hurt? Nobody's hurt. This doesn't concern you. If it's about my security, it absolutely concerns me. She stepped into the room. What happened? Dante and Marco exchanged a look. Then Dante sighed, gestured for the other men to leave. They filed out quickly, clearly relieved to escape. Sit, Dante said once they were alone with Marco. She sat. Around 2 a.m., Vincent sent men to the house, Dante said flatly. 4 of them. They approached the north gate armed, claiming they had business with you. Ice ran through her veins. What kind of business? They didn't get to explain. Marco's team intercepted them before they got close. He nodded at his underboss. Tell her. Marco's jaw was tight. They said Vincent wanted to talk to you, that you'd agreed to meet. When we told them you hadn't, they pulled weapons. My guys returned fire. 2 of Vincent's men are in the hospital. The other 2 ran. You shot them? They shot first, Marco said. We defended the property. Are your people okay? Couple bruises? Nothing serious. Marco glanced at Dante. The cops showed up. We gave statements. Self-defense, clear as day. But Vincent's going to spin this as us being aggressors, Dante finished. He'll claim his men were invited, that we overreacted, that we're dangerous. Were they invited? Alara looked between them. Did someone actually? No. Dante's voice was hard. Vincent fabricated an invitation. Probably has forged texts or emails. He wanted to either get to you or create a situation where we'd be forced to defend ourselves and look like the bad guys. He's escalating. He's desperate. Dante pulled up something on his phone, showed it to her. As of yesterday, 3 of his major investors pulled out. 2 banks froze his lines of credit pending investigation into money laundering. The DA opened an inquiry into his art collection. He's hemorrhaging money and credibility. So he's lashing out. He's trying to regain control, show that he's still powerful, that marrying you off didn't protect you. Dante set the phone down. Which means we need to be smarter, more careful. Or we hit him harder, Marco said. We know where he lives, where he works. We could... No. Dante cut him off. That's exactly what he wants. Us making a move that's clearly aggressive. Then he becomes the victim, and we're the monsters. He looked at Alara. How are you with testifying? Testifying? In court? Eventually, yes. But first I need you to give a statement to my lawyers. Everything Vincent did. Every time he hurt you. Every threat. Every incident. He paused. I know it's not easy to talk about. I'll do it. The words came out before she'd fully processed them. Whatever you need. You're sure? No, she wasn't sure. The thought of recounting everything, of putting it into words, of having strangers know what had been done to her, it made her skin crawl. But Vincent had sent men with guns to her home, had tried to get to her even here, in the place that was supposed to be safe. I'm sure, she said. Marco left to coordinate cleanup with the police. Dante walked to the window, staring out at the grounds where security lights illuminated the perimeter. I should have seen this coming, he said quietly. How could you have? Because I know how men like Vincent think. Pride matters more than logic. I've been dismantling him methodically, and eventually that was going to push him into doing something stupid. He turned back to her. I'm sorry you're dealing with this. You keep apologizing for things that aren't your fault. Maybe I just apologize better than I used to. A ghost of a smile. Sophia would be shocked. Alara stood, walked to where he stood. This close, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. The man ran a criminal empire and rarely showed strain, but this, her situation, seemed to actually bother him. When's the last time you slept? She asked. Sleep's overrated. That's not an answer. Couple days ago, maybe. He shrugged. I'll sleep when Vincent's dealt with. That could be weeks from now. Then I'll sleep in weeks. He rubbed his face. I need to make some calls. Get ahead of whatever story Vincent's spinning to the media. The media knows? 4 men shot outside a mobster's house? It'll be on the news by 6. He checked his watch, which gives me 90 minutes to control the narrative. She wanted to tell him to rest, to take a break, to let someone else handle it for a few hours. But she knew he wouldn't, knew that for whatever reason, guilt over Sophia, determination to win, or something else entirely, he'd committed to this path and wouldn't stop until it was done. I'll make coffee, she said instead. He looked surprised. You don't have to. I know, but I can't sleep either, and I make better coffee than Maria. She headed toward the door. How do you take it? Black, 2 sugars. Noted. In the kitchen, she found the expensive espresso machine that she'd been too intimidated to use and figured out the controls. The routine was calming, measuring grounds, heating milk, watching the dark liquid drip into cups. When she brought the coffee to Dante's office, he was on the phone speaking rapid Italian. He took the cup with a nod of thanks, still talking. She settled into the chair across from his desk and waited.
No. Tell him if he can't guarantee the votes, I'll find someone who can. I don't care about his concerns. A pause. Good. Make it happen. He hung up and took a long drink of coffee, then looked at her with something like approval. This is excellent. My mother taught me, before she died. Alara wrapped her hands around her own cup. She said knowing how to make good coffee would serve me better than most things they taught in finishing school. Smart woman. She was, until she wasn't. Alara stared into the dark liquid. Toward the end, she was just tired. Of my father, of pretending everything was fine, of maintaining appearances while falling apart. How'd she die? Car accident. Single vehicle late at night. The police said she fell asleep at the wheel. Alara met his eyes. But she'd been drinking, a lot, for months. You think she did it on purpose? I think she stopped caring whether she lived or died, which amounts to the same thing. She took a sip of coffee. My father remarried 6 months later, someone younger, more decorative, less complicated. Where's she now? Who knows? She left him within a year, took a nice settlement, and disappeared. A bitter smile. Smarter than my mother, smarter than me. You're still here. That takes a different kind of smart. Before she could respond, his phone rang again. He glanced at the screen and his expression hardened. It's the DA. He answered. Moretti. Alara watched his face as he listened, seeing the subtle shifts in expression, irritation, calculation, cold satisfaction. I see. And you're telling me this because... A pause. Understood. I'll make sure my lawyers are prepared. He ended the call and set the phone down carefully. Well? The DA's office is opening a formal investigation into Vincent Caruso. Multiple charges: financial fraud, art theft, money laundering. Dante's smile was sharp, and they want you to testify about the assault and harassment. They know about that? I made sure they knew about that, filed reports, provided witness statements, built a timeline. He leaned back. Vincent thought he was untouchable. Turns out he's just expensive to touch. And I've got deeper pockets. You bought the DA? I made it worth his while to actually do his job instead of looking the other way. Dante shrugged. Different thing. Is there a difference? Philosophically, probably not. Practically, it means Vincent goes down for things he actually did, not trumped up charges. He stood, paced. The shooting tonight complicates things, though. His lawyers will use it to paint him as a victim of mob violence. Can they make that stick? Depends on how good they are and how much he pays them. He stopped pacing. Which is why we need to move faster. Get your testimony locked in, get the harassment charges filed, show a clear pattern of behavior before he can muddy the waters. When? Today. My lawyers will be here by 9. He caught her expression. I know it's soon, but the longer we wait... I said I'd do it. I will. She set down her coffee cup with hands that only trembled slightly. What do I need to prepare? Just tell the truth. Everything he did, when he did it, who else knew? Dante's voice gentled. They're going to ask hard questions. Details you probably don't want to remember. Can you handle that? She thought about Vincent showing up at the gallery, about his men trying to force their way onto the property tonight, about 4 years of carefully learned helplessness and the slow, crushing weight of being someone's toy. I can handle it. The lawyers arrived at 9, exactly as promised. 2 of them, a woman named Rebecca Chen, who specialized in criminal prosecution, and a man named David Walsh, who handled civil litigation. Both were polished and professional, both clearly understood exactly who Dante was and what he was capable of, and both treated Alara with careful respect. They set up in the dining room with recording equipment and legal pads. Dante sat in on the first few minutes, then excused himself when Rebecca gently suggested his presence might make Alara less comfortable speaking freely. He paused at the door. You need me? You call. Understood? Understood. Then it was just Alara and the lawyers, and the story she'd never told anyone in full. Rebecca started with the basics: name, age, relationship to Vincent Caruso. Then, can you describe the nature of your relationship with Mr. Caruso?
He was my father's creditor. My father owed him money, gambling debts mostly, and couldn't pay. Vincent offered to forgive the debt in exchange for... She stopped, throat tight. Take your time, Rebecca said gently. In exchange for me. My company. He called it companionship. Said he just wanted someone to attend events with, to make him look good. Alara's hands twisted in her lap. It wasn't just that. What else was it? Control, power. He liked having something beautiful that belonged to him. She forced herself to continue. At first it was just dinners, galas, art gallery openings. He'd introduce me as a family friend, keep his hands to himself in public. And in private? In private he was different. She told them everything. The first time Vincent had cornered her in his car after an event, his hand on her thigh, his breath wine sour as he explained how grateful she should be for his generosity. The increasingly frequent private dinners where he'd expect her to stay after, where leaving became impossible without consequences. The way he'd grab her wrist hard enough to bruise when she said something he didn't like. The night he'd shoved her into a wall for refusing to kiss him, leaving her with a concussion she'd had to hide from everyone. David took notes. Rebecca asked careful follow-up questions, and Alara heard herself recounting 4 years of systematic degradation in flat, clinical terms that made it sound almost manageable. Did you ever report any of these incidents to authorities? Rebecca asked. No. Why not? Because Vincent owns half the police force, because my father told me reporting him would destroy our family, because I didn't think anyone would believe me over him. She met Rebecca's eyes. Because I was scared. Were you ever physically injured by Mr. Caruso? Yes, multiple times. Can you describe the most recent incident? Alara told them about her father's birthday party. About Vincent pulling her into the study, furious about her engagement to Dante. About him slamming her against the desk hard enough to crack a rib, his hands around her throat, hissing that she belonged to him and marriage wouldn't change that. Did anyone witness this assault? No, we were alone. Did you seek medical attention? No, I couldn't. He made sure I understood that if I told anyone, my father would pay the price. Rebecca made a note. The bruising from this incident, was it visible at your wedding? I covered it with makeup, but it was there. Did your husband see it? After, on our wedding night. Alara's voice dropped. He asked me about it. That's when I told him everything. They went on for 3 more hours. Every incident, every threat, every time Vincent had hurt her or made her feel like property. David compiled medical records, emergency room visits Alara had forgotten about, prescriptions for pain medication, a restraining order she'd filed against Vincent 2 years ago that had mysteriously vanished from court records. By the time they finished, Alara felt scraped raw, hollowed out. You did really well, Rebecca said, packing up her equipment. I know that wasn't easy. What happens now? We file charges. Assault, battery, harassment, stalking, coercion. David's also preparing civil suits for emotional distress and damages. She paused. Mrs. Moretti, I want to be honest with you. Vincent Caruso has resources, good lawyers, political connections. This isn't going to be quick or clean. But can we win? With your testimony and the evidence we're gathering, yes, I think we can. Rebecca's expression was firm. But you need to prepare yourself for him to fight back. He'll try to discredit you, paint you as vindictive or unstable. His lawyers will dig into your past, twist everything to make you look unreliable. I can handle it. I believe you can, but handling it doesn't mean it won't hurt. After the lawyers left, Alara found Dante in his office again, surrounded by papers and screens exactly like he had been that morning. How'd it go? He asked without looking up. Like having surgery without anesthesia. She slumped into the chair. But it's done. He finally looked at her, really looked, and something shifted in his expression. You need anything? A shower. Maybe to set myself on fire and start over as a different person. She tried to smile. The usual. Food first, then shower, then rest. He stood. Come on. I'm not hungry. Alara. He waited until she met his eyes. You just spent 3 hours reliving trauma. Your body needs fuel. Don't argue. She didn't have the energy to argue. Maria had prepared lunch, soup, and sandwiches, simple comfort food. Elara managed half a bowl before her stomach rebelled. Dante ate methodically, watching her with concern he didn't voice. Rebecca said Vincent's going to fight back, Elara said finally, that his lawyers will try to destroy my credibility. They will. That's standard procedure. She said they'll make me look vindictive, unstable. They'll try. Dante set down his spoon. But we've got documentation, medical records, witnesses who saw the bruises, heard the threats. Your credibility's solid. What if it's not enough? Then we find more evidence. We dig deeper. We don't stop until he's buried. He leaned forward. Elara, I've been fighting battles like this my whole life. I know how to win. You just have to trust me. I do trust you. That's what scares me. Why? Because trusting people always ends badly for me. She pushed away the soup. My mother trusted my father. I trusted Vincent, at least at first when he said it was just dinner. Trusting gets you hurt. I'm not your father, and I'm sure as hell not Vincent. Dante's voice was steady. But I can't force you to trust me. That's your choice. I know. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Dante's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression darkened. What? Vincent just posted bail for his men, the ones who attacked the property. He showed her the notification. They're out already. How is that possible? They shot at your people. Money and lawyers. Dante stood, already texting. Marco's going to put extra security on the perimeter. I want you to stay inside until this settles. For how long? However long it takes. He caught her expression. I know you hate feeling trapped, but until Vincent's in custody or underground, you're not safe outside these walls. So I'm a prisoner again. You're protected. Different thing. Is it? Yes. His voice was firm. A prisoner has no choice. You have all the choices. What you do, where you go in the house, who you see. The only restriction is leaving the property without protection. That's not imprisonment. That's survival. She wanted to argue, wanted to rage against the unfairness of being confined while Vincent walked free. But she also remembered his men at the gates, guns drawn, and knew Dante was right. Fine, she said. I'll stay inside. Thank you. Over the next week, the walls closed in slowly. Not physically. The estate was huge, with rooms Elara still hadn't explored. But mentally, emotionally, the knowledge that she couldn't leave became suffocating. She tried to fill the time, read books from Dante's library, watched movies, started painting again, something she hadn't done since college, using supplies Maria had ordered without being asked. But every activity felt hollow, like marking time until something broke. Dante was gone more than he was home, meeting with lawyers and politicians and people whose names Elara didn't know. When he was there, he was usually in his office, working 18-hour days to systematically destroy Vincent's empire. News filtered in through Marco and Luca. Vincent's art gallery closed, seized by federal investigators. 2 more investors pulled out. The Benedetti family formally cut ties, leaving Vincent without his most powerful protection. But Vincent himself remained free, fighting the charges, hiring better lawyers, calling in favors with judges and councilmen. It's working, Dante told her one night, finding her in the library staring at a canvas she'd been working on for 3 days. Slowly, but it's working. Doesn't feel like it. Wars aren't won overnight. He looked at her painting, abstract, all dark colors and sharp angles. That's good. Angry, but good. I've got a lot of anger right now. Use it. Better than letting it eat you alive. He sat on the window seat. Rebecca called, "The DA's moving forward with charges. They'll want you to testify at the arraignment." When? Next week. Maybe the week after. Depends on Vincent's lawyers and their stalling tactics. He paused. You'll have to leave the property. Go to the courthouse. Okay? It's going to be public, media circus. Vincent's team will try to intimidate you. I said okay, Dante. She set down her paintbrush. I'm not going to fall apart. I know you're not. I want you prepared. I've been preparing for this my whole life. I just didn't know it. She turned to face him. Every time Vincent hurt me and I survived. Every time my father told me to be grateful and I bit my tongue. Every time I looked in the mirror and convinced myself I could make it one more day. That was all preparation for this. Dante studied her face. You're stronger than you think, or more broken than I want to admit. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. Before he could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and stood quickly. I need to take this. He answered as he walked out. Yeah, talk to me. Alara returned to her painting, adding darker layers, harsher lines. Through the open door, she could hear fragments of Dante's conversation. How many? No, pull everyone back. I don't want, because if we engage now, we play into his... Understood. Keep me updated. He came back looking grim. What happened? Vincent's making moves. His people have been spotted near several of my businesses. Not doing anything, just watching, showing presence. Dante ran a hand through his hair. He's trying to provoke a response. Get me to do something aggressive so he can claim victim status. Are you going to? No, that's what he wants. He sat back down. We stay smart, stay legal. Let the system do what it's supposed to do. And if the system doesn't work, his smile was cold. Then we have other options. The arraignment was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Dante spent the days before preparing Alara for what to expect. The cameras, the reporters, Vincent's lawyers trying to shake her testimony. Rebecca came by twice to run through questions, making sure Alara's story was consistent and clear. Monday night, Alara couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, imagining every way tomorrow could go wrong. Around midnight, she gave up and went downstairs. Dante's office was dark, but she found him in the kitchen, surprisingly, making tea. Couldn't sleep either? She asked. Old habit. Night before something important, I make tea. Sophia's recipe. He poured 2 cups. Chamomile, honey, a shot of whiskey. She swore it cured everything from insomnia to heartbreak. Did it work? For her, maybe. For me? He shrugged. Jury's still out. They sat at the kitchen island, drinking tea that was probably too sweet and definitely too strong. I'm scared, Alara admitted. About tomorrow. That's normal. What if I freeze? What if I can't say the words? Then you take a breath and try again. Rebecca's prepared for that. Hell, I'm prepared for that. He set down his cup. Alara, you've already done the hard part. You told your story. Tomorrow is just repeating it in a different room. A room full of people, with cameras, and Vincent sitting there watching me. Vincent can watch all he wants. He can't touch you, can't hurt you. The most he can do is sit there and listen while you destroy him. Dante's eyes were hard. That's going to kill him more than anything else, watching you take his power away. She wanted to believe that, wanted to believe she had that kind of strength. What if he wins? He won't. You can't promise that. I can and I am. Dante leaned forward. Because even if the legal system fails, and it might, money corrupts everything. I don't fail. If the courts won't put him away, I will, permanently. You'd kill him. Without hesitation. He said it calmly, like discussing the weather. I've killed for less. Much less. She should be horrified. Should be appalled that her husband was casually discussing murder over chamomile tea. Instead, she felt safer than she had in weeks. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For meaning it. For not making it sound noble or justified. Just for meaning it. They finished their tea in silence. Then Dante walked her back upstairs, waited while she went into her room, and only left when he heard the lock click. She lay in bed, listening to his footsteps recede down the hallway, and thought about a man who made tea from his dead sister's recipe and promised murder with the same casual certainty most people promised coffee. Tomorrow she'd face Vincent in court. She'd tell her story to strangers and cameras and a judge who might or might not care. But tonight, in this house, protected by a man more dangerous than the one who'd hurt her, Alara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The courthouse looked like every government building Alara had ever seen. Imposing stone facade, too many steps, the kind of architecture designed to make regular people feel small. Cameras lined the sidewalk, reporters jostling for position, their voices a chaotic wall of sound that hit her the moment the SUV pulled up. Marco was out first, scanning the crowd. Tony opened her door, his bulk blocking most of the cameras. Dante appeared at her other side, his hand at the small of her back, steady, grounding. Mrs. Moretti, Is it true Vincent Caruso assaulted you? How long were you his mistress before marrying Dante Moretti? Did your husband order the attack on Caruso's men? The questions came rapid fire, aggressive, designed to provoke a reaction. Alara kept her eyes forward, walking the gauntlet with Dante's hand anchoring her. Inside, the noise dropped to echoes and whispers. Rebecca met them in the hallway, her expression professionally neutral. They're ready for us. Courtroom 3. She looked at Alara. How are you feeling? Like I might throw up. That's normal. Just remember, stick to what we practiced. Answer the questions directly. Don't elaborate unless asked. Rebecca's voice softened. You've got this. The courtroom was smaller than Alara expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, the judge's bench elevated like an altar. Vincent sat at the defense table with 2 lawyers in expensive suits, looking calm and collected. When Alara entered, his eyes found her immediately. He smiled. It was the smile he'd used at galleries and galas. Charming, warm. The smile that said he owned the room and everyone in it. Alara's hand started shaking. Dante's hand tightened on hers briefly before he had to take his seat in the gallery. Marco sat behind him, radiating quiet menace. Rebecca guided Alara to the witness section. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s, Judge Patricia Hawthorne, whose reputation for not tolerating nonsense was the only reason Rebecca seemed optimistic about today. All rise. The proceedings began with motions and legal terminology that washed over Alara like white noise. She focused on breathing, on keeping her hands still, on not looking at Vincent. Then Rebecca called her to the stand. The walk to the witness box felt impossibly long. The bailiff administered the oath. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? And Alara said yes in a voice that didn't shake. Rebecca started with easy questions. Name, age, relationship to the defendant, establishing baseline facts for the record. Then, Ms. Voss, can you describe your relationship with Vincent Caruso? Alara took a breath, told the story she'd rehearsed, her father's debts, Vincent's offer, the gradual escalation from dinner companion to something darker. Can you describe the incident that occurred on March 15th? Rebecca asked. March 15th, her father's birthday party. The study. Vincent's hands around her throat. He was angry about my engagement, Alara said, keeping her voice steady. He pulled me into my father's study. He said marriage wouldn't change our arrangement, that I still belonged to him. What happened next? He grabbed me, shoved me against the desk, put his hands around my throat. Her voice cracked slightly. He said, if I thought Dante Moretti could protect me, I was stupid, that he owned me and he'd prove it whenever he wanted. Were you injured? Cracked rib, bruising on my throat and torso. Did you seek medical attention? No, he made it clear that if I told anyone, there would be consequences. One of Vincent's lawyers, a man named Preston Harding with silver hair and a face like carved ice, stood. Objection. Hearsay and speculation about my client's alleged threats. Judge Hawthorne looked unimpressed. Overruled. The witness is describing her understanding of events. Continue, Ms. Chen. Rebecca walked Alara through more incidents. The gallery encounter. Vincent's text messages. The men he'd sent to the estate. Each answer was another nail in Vincent's coffin, another piece of evidence that he'd systematically terrorized her for years. Then Preston Harding stood for cross-examination, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Ms. Voss, he began, his voice smooth as silk, you testified that Mr. Caruso assaulted you on March 15th. Is that correct? Yes. And yet you have no medical records documenting these alleged injuries. I told you, I couldn't get treatment. He threatened, so we only have your word that any injury occurred at all. I had bruises. Multiple people saw them. Did they? Harding pulled out a document. I have photographs from your wedding, 3 days after this alleged assault. You look perfectly fine. Radiant, even. I used makeup. Convenient. His smile was patronizing. Ms. Voss, isn't it true that you willingly attended social events with Mr. Caruso for 4 years? I didn't have a choice. You had every choice. You could have said no, could have gone to the police, could have told someone. He paused. But you didn't, because you enjoyed the lifestyle Mr. Caruso provided, didn't you? No.
Expensive dinners, gallery openings, trips to Europe. You enjoyed all of that. He controlled everything. Where I went, what I wore. You attended these events of your own free will. Nobody forced you. Alara's throat tightened. This was exactly what Rebecca had warned her about. The twisting of facts, the reframing of abuse as choice. My father's debt forced me. Vincent's threats forced me.
Alleged threats, Harding corrected, for which you have no proof beyond your own testimony. He consulted his notes. Ms. Voss, isn't it true that you only claimed assault after marrying Dante Moretti, a man with substantial resources and a documented history of violence? Objection, Rebecca said sharply. Mr. Moretti is not on trial here. Sustained. Judge Hawthorne looked at Harding. Stick to relevant questions, counselor. Of course, Your Honor. Harding turned back to Alara. Ms. Voss, have you received any financial benefit from making these allegations against Mr. Caruso? No. Your husband hasn't offered you money, property, security in exchange for your testimony? He's offered me protection from a man who hurt me for years. Or perhaps he's offered you a way to destroy a business rival while playing the victim? That's not... Mr. Caruso's legitimate business interests have mysteriously encountered obstacles since your marriage. Development projects blocked, investors pulling out, all coinciding with your allegations. Harding's voice was sharp now. Isn't it true that you and your husband are working together to destroy Mr. Caruso's reputation and business? I'm telling the truth about what he did to me. Are you? Or are you a convenient weapon in your husband's criminal enterprise? Objection! Rebecca was on her feet. Counsel is testifying, not questioning. Sustained, Mr. Harding, ask questions or sit down. Harding smiled thinly. No further questions, Your Honor. Alara stepped down from the witness stand on legs that barely held her. She'd known cross-examination would be brutal, but knowing and experiencing were different things. Harding had made her sound like a gold digger, a liar, a vindictive wife helping her mobster husband eliminate competition. The hearing continued with other witnesses. A gallery employee who'd seen Vincent approach Alara. Marco, testifying about the shooting at the estate. Medical experts discussing the photographs of Alara's bruises that Dante's people had managed to obtain from security footage at various events. Through it all, Vincent sat calmly, occasionally whispering to his lawyers, never showing concern. Judge Hawthorne called a recess. Rebecca pulled Alara into a conference room. You did well, she said immediately. Harding tried to shake you, and you held firm. I sounded defensive, weak. You sounded honest. There's a difference. Rebecca pulled out her tablet. The judge is smart. She's heard this kind of victim blaming before. She knows what Harding's doing. Will it be enough? For the arraignment? Yes. Charges will stand. He'll be indicted. Rebecca paused. But Alara, I need you to understand. This is just the beginning. Trial's going to be worse. Much worse. I know. Dante appeared in the doorway. Can I have a minute? Rebecca nodded and stepped out. Dante closed the door behind her and pulled Alara into his arms without asking. She stood rigid for a moment, then collapsed against him, shaking. You did good, he said quietly. I felt like I was on trial, like I was the one who did something wrong. That's how they work. Make the victim defend themselves until everyone forgets who the actual criminal is. His arms tightened around her. But you held your ground, told your story. That takes guts. Vincent's going to walk away from this, isn't he? From the arraignment? No, he's getting indicted. But trial? Dante pulled back to look at her. That's going to be a fight. His lawyers are good, and they're expensive. So all of this was for nothing? No. All of this is building a case, creating a record. Even if he beats the criminal charges, we've got civil suits waiting, and if those fail... His expression hardened. Then I handle it my way. She knew what that meant. Knew Dante would make Vincent disappear if the legal system failed. The thought should horrify her. It didn't. They returned to the courtroom for Judge Hawthorne's ruling. The judge looked over her notes, then directly at Vincent. Mr. Caruso, the evidence presented today is sufficient to proceed to indictment. Charges of assault, battery, harassment, stalking, and coercion will stand. Bail is set at $5 million, with the condition that you maintain no contact with the victim. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. 5 million. Vincent posted it within the hour. The ride home was silent. Alara stared out the window, watching the city scroll past, feeling nothing. Dante made phone calls, his voice a low rumble of Italian that she'd stopped trying to follow weeks ago. At the estate, she went straight to her room. Stripped off the conservative suit Rebecca had suggested she wear, stood in the shower until the water ran cold, trying to wash off the feeling of Vincent's eyes on her, Harding's words twisting her truth into lies. When she finally emerged, Maria had left dinner on a tray outside her door. Alara picked at it without interest, then gave up and went to the library. The painting she'd been working on sat on the easel, half-finished and angry. She picked up a brush, added harsh strokes of black and red, destroying the composition but not caring. That's one way to process. She turned to find Dante in the doorway, holding 2 glasses of whiskey. I thought you might need this, he said, offering one. She took it, drank. The burn was harsh and grounding. Rebecca called, Dante said, settling into the window seat. She's pleased with how today went. Thinks we've got a strong case. Harding made me sound like a liar. Harding did his job. Doesn't mean he's right. What if the jury believes him? Then we appeal. We fight. We don't stop. Dante studied her face. You're spiraling. Stop it. I'm being realistic. You're catastrophizing. Different thing. He set down his glass. Alara, you stood in that courtroom today and told your story to a room full of strangers. You didn't break, didn't back down. That's a win, regardless of what happens next. Doesn't feel like winning. Winning never feels like you think it will. He stood, walked to where she stood at the easel. My first real victory in this business, taking over a territory from a rival family, I thought I'd feel powerful, invincible. Instead, I felt exhausted and empty. What changed? Nothing. I just learned to redefine what winning meant. He looked at her painting. Sometimes winning isn't glory, it's just survival, making it through one more day without breaking. That's a depressing definition. Maybe, but it's honest. He turned to face her. You survived today. Tomorrow you'll survive again. Eventually, enough survival adds up to something that looks like winning. She wanted to argue, wanted to point out that survival wasn't living, that getting through days wasn't the same as having a life. But she was too tired to fight. I'm going to bed, she said instead. Good idea. Tomorrow's going to be busy. Why? What's tomorrow? We're going on offense. His smile was cold. Vincent made a mistake showing up in court today looking smug. Reminded me why I'm doing this. He left her there with her ruined painting and her half-empty glass, and Alara wondered what going on offense meant in Dante's world. She found out the next morning when Marco appeared at breakfast with a tablet. Boss thought you should see this. The screen showed a news article. Federal investigation expands into Caruso Holdings. Money laundering, art theft allegations mount. How? Boss made some calls, encouraged certain people to look more closely at Vincent's finances. Marco scrolled through more articles. 3 major news outlets running exposés today, all citing anonymous sources and leaked documents. Leaked by Dante. Leaked by concerned citizens who happened to have access to incriminating information. Marco's smile was sharp. Semantics. Over the next week, Vincent's world crumbled in slow motion. Every day brought new revelations. Art pieces in his private collection matching descriptions of stolen works. Shell companies with connections to known money laundering operations. Offshore accounts containing millions in unexplained funds. His investors fled. His banks froze accounts. His lawyer, Preston Harding, withdrew from the case, thus citing ethical concerns. Which means Vincent couldn't pay him anymore, Luca explained during one of his updates to Dante and Alara. Harding doesn't work for free, and Vincent's liquid assets are currently tied up in federal investigations. So he's broke, Alara said. Not broke, but cash poor and getting poorer. Luca showed them a financial breakdown. His real estate empire is mortgaged to the ceiling. His art collection is frozen by federal seizure. His political connections are running away from the scandal. Within a month, he'll be bankrupt. Unless he has reserves we don't know about, Dante said. Possible, but unlikely. We've been thorough. Luca's expression was satisfied. He's done, boss. Even if he beats the criminal charges, he's financially destroyed. Dante didn't look satisfied. What about the Benedetti connection? Carlo made it official yesterday. Complete severance. Won't even take Vincent's calls anymore. And Victor Voss? Paying his debt to you in installments. Hasn't spoken to Vincent in weeks. Luca paused. He's asked to see Alara. 3 times now.
No, Alara and Dante said simultaneously. Luca nodded. Figured. Just wanted you to know. After Luca left, Alara turned to Dante. You've destroyed him. Systematically, completely destroyed him. Not yet. He's still breathing. Is that next? Actually killing him? If necessary. Dante said it calmly. Depends on what he does next. What can he do? You've taken everything from him. Desperate men do desperate things. He looked at her. Which is why security stays tight. Why you don't leave the property. Why we assume he's planning something until he's actually in a cell or a grave. You think he'll come after me? I think he's got nothing left to lose, which makes him unpredictable. Dante stood, paced. Men like Vincent. They'd rather burn everything down than admit defeat. And if he's going down, he'll want to take someone with him. Me. You. Me. Whoever he blames for his situation. He stopped pacing. Marco's already doubled security. I've got people watching Vincent 24/7. If he makes a move, we'll know. And then what? Then I end this permanently. 2 days later, Vincent made his move. It started with a phone call at 3 a.m. Dante's phone ringing, Marco's voice urgent. Boss, we've got a situation. Vincent's people just grabbed someone. Alara heard Dante's voice from her room, sharp and commanding. She pulled on a robe and went to his office. Who did they take? Dante was pulling on clothes, phone on speaker. When? Where? About 20 minutes ago, outside her apartment in the city. Marco's voice was tense. They're demanding a meet. Vincent wants to talk, just him and Alara. Says if she doesn't show, the girl dies. Alara's blood ran cold. What girl? Dante turned, saw her in the doorway. One of the women who filed harassment charges against Vincent, Sarah Mitchell. She agreed to testify at trial. He took her because of me. He took her because he's desperate and stupid. Dante grabbed his gun, checked the clip. Marco, location? Warehouse District, the old Riverside storage facility. Vincent says Alara has 2 hours to show up alone, or Sarah dies. He's bluffing. Maybe. But boss, this girl is 23 years old, grad student. If he's serious, we can't send Alara into a trap. I'll go. Alara heard herself say it before she'd fully processed the thought. Both Dante and Marco went silent. No, Dante said flatly. He has an innocent woman because of me. I'm not letting her die. Alara, this is exactly what he wants. You, vulnerable, away from protection. It's a trap. I know it's a trap, but what choice do I have? She moved into the office. If I don't go, he kills her. If I do go, maybe I can buy time for you to get her out. Or he kills you both. Then you'll have justification to kill him. She met Dante's eyes. Either way, this ends tonight. Absolutely not. I'm not sending you to your death because Vincent took a hostage. You're not sending me. I'm choosing to go. She grabbed his arm. Dante, she's there because she tried to help me, because she was brave enough to testify. I can't let her pay for that with her life. And I can't let you walk into a warehouse to face the man who's been terrorizing you for years. His voice was hard. Find another way, Marco. Boss, we've got 90 minutes before his deadline. That's not enough time to eat. Then we hit the warehouse with overwhelming force. Pull everyone we've got. Storm the place. And Sarah dies in the crossfire, Alara said quietly. Dante rounded on her. And you die if you go in there. How is that better? Because I'm choosing it. Because I'm done being the victim he made me. Her voice was steady now. You've spent weeks destroying his empire, protecting me, fighting this war. Let me finish it. By getting yourself killed? By facing him. By showing him I'm not afraid anymore. She paused. You said I was stronger than I thought. Let me prove it. Not like this. Then how? She stepped closer. When does it end, Dante? When does the running and hiding and being terrified stop? I can't live like this forever.
You've been living like this for 6 weeks. That's not forever. It feels like forever. And every day that Vincent's out there, free and breathing, is another day I'm still his victim. Her hands were shaking, but her voice stayed level. I want my life back, and the only way to get it is to stop being afraid of him. There are other ways. Name one. He couldn't. They both knew it. Marco's voice came through the speaker. Boss, I can have a team in position around the warehouse in 40 minutes. Snipers, entry team, the works. We can cover her. You'll get civilians killed, Dante said. Maybe. Probably. Marco paused. But Ilara's right. This ends tonight, one way or another. Dante looked at her for a long moment. She saw the war in his expression, the desire to protect her, the knowledge that she was right, the fury at being put in this position. Fine, he finally said. But we do this smart. Marco, get the team mobilized. I want snipers on every approach. Entry team ready to move on my signal. And someone get me the layout of that warehouse. Every entrance, every window, every place Vincent could have men positioned. On it. Dante ended the call and turned to Ilara. You're wearing a wire. You're taking a weapon. And the second things go wrong, you hit the ground and let my people handle it. Understood? Understood. I mean it, Ilara. This isn't bravery. This is calculated risk. If you die because you're trying to prove something, I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm trying to save an innocent woman and end this nightmare. She met his eyes. And maybe, just maybe, take back some of the power Vincent stole from me. He studied her face, then nodded once. Get dressed. Something practical. We leave in 20 minutes. The warehouse was exactly as grim as Ilara expected. Corrugated metal, broken windows, the kind of place that had been abandoned so long the city had forgotten it existed. Marco's team had set up a perimeter 2 blocks out, invisible in the darkness. Dante rode in the SUV with her, silent and tense. The wire under her shirt felt foreign, the small pistol tucked into her jacket pocket heavier than it should be. You remember how to use that? Dante asked, nodding at the gun. Point and shoot. You showed me last week. Safety's on. Flip it off before you pull the trigger. He checked his own weapon. And Ilara? Don't hesitate. Vincent's going to try to talk, to manipulate. Don't listen. Just survive. What if he actually lets Sarah go? He won't. This is about hurting you, not saving himself. Dante's expression was grim. Be ready for anything. The SUV stopped a block from the warehouse. Marco was in the passenger seat, watching feeds from the surveillance team. We've got heat signatures. 3 inside, probably Vincent and 2 guards. Sarah's there, tied up, but alive. Vincent's near the center of the main floor. Where are your snipers? Positioned. Clean shots on the guards, but Vincent's using Sarah as a shield. We can't take him without risking her. Ilara's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Come alone. No tricks. You have 5 minutes. That's my cue, she said, reaching for the door. Dante grabbed her arm. Listen to me. You get Sarah out, you survive. Everything else is secondary. I don't care about Vincent, about justice, about any of it. You come out alive. That's the only thing that matters. Okay? Say you mean it. I mean it. She met his eyes. I'll come out alive. He pulled her close, kissed her hard. It was the first time he'd kissed her since their wedding, and it tasted like desperation and fury and something else she didn't have time to analyze. Go, he said roughly. She went. The walk to the warehouse felt surreal. Each step was a choice to keep moving forward instead of running. Her hands didn't shake. Her breathing stayed steady. Something cold and determined had settled in her chest, pushing out the fear. The warehouse door was open. Inside, dim lighting from industrial fixtures created pools of shadow. Vincent stood in the center of the space, immaculate as always despite the surroundings. Sarah Mitchell sat bound to a chair beside him, tape over her mouth, terror in her eyes. 2 men flanked them, both armed. Ilara. Vincent's voice was warm, welcoming. I'm so glad you came. Let her go, Vincent. She's not part of this. She became part of this when she agreed to testify against me. But you're right. She's not important. You are. He gestured at Sarah. Come here. Trade places with her. She can leave. How do I know you'll keep your word? You don't. But do you have a choice? She didn't. Alara walked forward slowly, hands visible. The wire under her shirt felt huge, obvious. Surely he'd notice. That's close enough. Vincent studied her. You look different, harder. Marriage to Dante Moretti must be wearing on you. I'm here. Let her go. Not until you tell me something first. His expression shifted, charm falling away to reveal the rage beneath. Why? You had everything. I gave you everything. And you threw it away for what? A mobster who'll get tired of you within a year? You gave me nothing but pain and terror. I gave you purpose, direction. You were nothing before me, just another rich girl with no ambitions. I made you important. The casual delusion was stunning. You made me a prisoner. I made you mine. He took a step toward her. And you betrayed that. Went to Dante, told lies, destroyed my life. I told the truth about what you did. The truth. Vincent laughed bitterly. The truth is you enjoyed every moment, the attention, the luxury, the power of being associated with me. You wanted it, Alara. And now you're trying to rewrite history to make yourself the victim. This was pointless. He'd never see it, would never acknowledge what he'd done. Let Sarah go, Alara said again. This is between us. Fine. Vincent nodded to one of his men. Cut her loose. The guard moved towards Sarah. Hope flickered in the girl's eyes. Then Vincent pulled a gun from his jacket and pointed it at Alara. But you're staying, forever this time. Everything happened at once. The guard cutting Sarah's bonds. Vincent's finger tightening on the trigger. Alara's hand diving for the gun in her pocket. And then the windows exploded inward as Dante's team crashed through. Glass rained down. Shouts echoed. Vincent's guards went for their weapons. Sarah screamed behind the tape. Alara hit the ground like Dante had told her to, hands over her head. Gunfire erupted, sharp cracks that hurt her ears. Bodies hit the floor. Men shouted commands in Italian and English. Then silence. She looked up. Both of Vincent's guards were down, not moving. Sarah was on the floor, unharmed but shaking, and Vincent stood 5 feet away, his gun aimed at Alara's head. Don't. Dante's voice, cold and level. He stood at the blown-out window, his gun trained on Vincent. Put it down. Or what? You'll shoot me? Vincent laughed, a broken sound. You've already destroyed everything else. Might as well finish it. Put down the gun, Vincent. No, I don't think I will. Vincent's hand was steady. She took everything from me. My business, my reputation, my life. Only fair she pays the price. She didn't take anything. You destroyed yourself. Because of her. Because she couldn't just accept what we had. What you had was abuse disguised as affection. And she's done paying for your delusions. Dante took a step forward. Last chance, put it down. Make me. The standoff stretched. Alara could see Vincent's finger on the trigger, could see the calculation in his eyes. He was going to shoot. Would die for the chance to kill her. And something in her broke. Not in fear, not in despair. In rage. She was done being afraid. Done letting Vincent control her life through terror. Done being the victim he'd made her. Her hand found the gun in her pocket, flipped the safety off like Dante had shown her, pulled it free. No. Her voice was steady. You don't get to do this anymore. Vincent's eyes widened. Alara! She fired. The recoil shocked through her arm. The sound was deafening. Vincent stumbled backward, red blooming across his shoulder. His gun clattered to the concrete. Dante moved in instantly, kicking Vincent's weapon away, securing him. Marco rushed to Sarah, cutting her free. Other men in tactical gear flooded the warehouse, and Alara sat on the cold floor, still holding the gun, staring at what she'd done. She'd shot him. Actually pulled the trigger, hurt him the way he'd hurt her. It should feel like victory, like justice, like power reclaimed. Instead, it just felt necessary, like finishing something that should have ended years ago. Dante was suddenly there, kneeling beside her, taking the gun gently from her shaking hands. It's over. You're okay. It's over. Sarah was crying, thanking Marco between sobs. Vincent was on the ground, cursing and bleeding, but alive. Police sirens wailed in the distance. I shot him, Alara heard herself say. In self-defense, Justified. Legal. Dante's hands framed her face. Alara, look at me. You did what you had to do. Nothing more. He was going to kill me. I know, and you stopped him. His voice was fierce with pride and relief. You saved yourself. The police arrived, then paramedics. Vincent was loaded into an ambulance under guard. Sarah was wrapped in blankets and given water. Dante spoke to the officers, his lawyers appearing with impossible speed to manage the narrative. Self-defense. Clear-cut case. Witness testimony from Sarah Mitchell confirming Vincent Caruso had taken her hostage and threatened Alara Moretti's life. Justifiable use of force. By dawn, Alara was in Dante's office at the estate, wrapped in a blanket, drinking tea she couldn't taste while lawyers explained what would happen next. The DA's not pressing charges, Rebecca said. Self-defense is obvious. Vincent's going down for kidnapping, assault with a deadly weapon, and about 6 other felonies. With his priors and the federal investigations, he's looking at 20 to life minimum. What about Sarah? Shaken, but unhurt. She's with her family now. Agreed to testify about the kidnapping. Rebecca paused. She wanted me to tell you thank you for coming for her. Alara nodded numbly. After Rebecca left, Dante sat beside her. How are you? I don't know. I shot someone. You defended yourself. I know, but I pulled the trigger. Hurt him. She looked at Dante. Does it get easier? The violence? No. It gets familiar. Different thing. He took her hand. But Alara, what you did tonight wasn't violence for its own sake. It was survival. There's no shame in that. Vincent's going to prison. For the rest of his life, if Rebecca's right. And my father? Continuing to pay his debt. Staying away from you, per our agreement. Dante paused. Do you want to see him? No. The answer came immediately. Certainly. He made his choices. I've made mine. Fair enough. They sat in silence as sunlight began creeping through the windows. Somewhere in the city, Sarah Mitchell was safe. Vincent Caruso was in a hospital bed under police guard, and Alara was here, alive, having faced her demons and survived. What happens now? She asked. Now you rest. Process. Figure out what kind of life you want to build now that you're free. Dante squeezed her hand. Whatever that looks like, I'll help. You've already helped, more than I'm not finished. He turned to face her fully. When we got married, I told you it was business, strategic, and maybe it started that way. But somewhere in the last 2 months, that changed. Changed how? I care about you, what happens to you, whether you're happy or hurting. He said it simply, like stating a fact. I don't know what to call that. Don't know if it's love or just investment in someone I've come to respect. But it's real. Alara stared at him, processing this confession from a man who didn't do emotions or vulnerability. I care about you too, she said quietly. I don't know if that's love or gratitude or Stockholm Syndrome, but it's real. He smiled, actually smiled. We're a mess. Completely. Want to stay a mess together? See where this goes? Yeah. She managed a small smile back. I think I do. The sun continued rising, painting the office in gold. Outside, security still patrolled. The legal battles would continue. The trauma wouldn't disappear overnight. But for the first time in 4 years, Alara felt something that might be peace. Vincent Caruso was going to prison. Her father was at arm's length, and she was here in this house with a man who'd gone to war for her and maybe, just maybe, loved her in his own broken way. It wasn't perfect, wasn't healed, wasn't easy, but it was hers. And that was enough. 3 months after the warehouse, Alara still woke up some nights with the sound of gunfire echoing in her head. Not every night, not even most nights, but enough that she'd stopped pretending the nightmares would just disappear on their own. The therapist Dante had found, Dr. Sarah Reeves, who specialized in trauma and had a client list that probably included half the city's organized crime families, sat across from her in an office that looked more like someone's living room than a clinical space. The dreams are getting less frequent, Alara said, curling into the leather chair. Used to be every night. Now it's maybe twice a week. That's progress. Dr. Reeves made a note. What triggers them? Can you identify any patterns? Loud noises sometimes. Last week a car backfired and I almost dove under a table. Alara managed a weak smile. Very dramatic. Understandable given what you experienced. Your body's still processing the trauma. Dr. Reeves set down her pen. How are things with Dante? That was the complicated question. Things with Dante were good? Strange? Evolving in ways Alara couldn't quite articulate? Better. Different. She searched for the right words. He's trying. We both are. But neither of us really knows how to do this. Do what? Be married. Be partners. Be whatever we're supposed to be to each other. Alara stared out the window at the city below. We got married as a business arrangement. Then it became about survival. Now Vincent's in prison and we're just here together. And I don't know what we're building. What do you want to be building? Alara didn't have an answer for that. When she got home, and she thought of it as home now, not the estate or Dante's house, but actually home, Maria greeted her with a smile and news that Dante was in a meeting but wanted to see her when he was done. Alara found refuge in the library, pulling out her laptop to review the documents she'd been working on for weeks. A proposal. A business plan. Something she'd been building in secret, not sure if it was brilliant or crazy. Probably both. There you are. Dante appeared in the doorway, loosening his tie. He looked tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that came from running an empire while trying to go legitimate. How was therapy? Fine. Good. She says I'm making progress. Are you? I think so. Haven't had a panic attack in 2 weeks. That's something. She closed the laptop. How was your meeting? Tedious. The Benedetti absorption is taking longer than expected. Carlo keeps finding reasons to delay signing the final papers. Dante poured himself a drink from the bar cart. Want one? Sure. He made her the whiskey sour she'd developed a taste for. One of the small intimacies they'd built over the last 3 months. He knew how she took her coffee, what she liked for breakfast, that she couldn't sleep without reading first. She knew he worked until 3 a.m. most nights, that he visited his sister's grave every Sunday, that he had nightmares too but would never admit it. I need to talk to you about something, Alara said, taking the drink. His expression shifted immediately to alert concern. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I have an idea. A project. She pulled up the documents on her laptop. I want to show you something. He sat beside her, reading over her shoulder. The proposal was detailed. A foundation to help women escaping abusive situations. Legal aid, housing assistance, counseling services, job training. Everything Alara wished she'd had access to when Vincent controlled her life. Dante read in silence, scrolling through page after page of research and planning. When he finished, he looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. This is ambitious, he said finally. I know. Maybe too ambitious. I don't have experience running a nonprofit, and the startup costs are... I'll fund it. She blinked. What? The startup costs. Operating budget for the first 2 years. Whatever you need. He gestured at the screen. This is good work, Alara. Important work. Of course I'll fund it. I wasn't asking you to... I know, but I'm offering anyway. He set down his drink. You want to help people who've been where you were. That's not just ambitious, that's necessary. It's also using your money to do it. Money from... She stopped herself. From criminal enterprises, Dante finished. Yeah, it is. You okay with that? Was she? Using money made from drugs and weapons and violence to help abuse survivors felt hypocritical. But it also felt like redemption, like taking something dirty and making it clean. I think I am, she said slowly, as long as the foundation itself is completely legitimate. No mob ties, no laundering, nothing that could come back to hurt the women we're trying to help. Agreed. We'll set it up through legitimate channels. Separate from my businesses entirely. He paused. You'll need a board, legal team, director of operations. This is going to be a lot of work. I know. I want to do it anyway. Then do it. He smiled, and it was genuine. I'm proud of you. The words hit harder than they should have. Her father had never said that. Vincent certainly never had. But Dante, criminal, killer, dangerous man, looked at her foundation proposal and felt pride. Thank you, she managed. Don't thank me. You're doing the work. I'm just writing checks. He stood. But speaking of work, I need to make some calls. Carlo's stalling because the Russos are making noise about territory disputes. I need to handle it before it becomes a war. He left her there with her laptop and her plans, and Alara felt something shift in her chest. Purpose. Direction. A reason to get up in the morning beyond just surviving. She'd been a victim for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to want something beyond safety. Now she wanted more. The foundation took shape over the next 2 months. Dante connected her with lawyers who specialized in nonprofit law. Luca helped navigate the bureaucratic maze of incorporation and licensing. Maria, surprisingly, volunteered to help coordinate volunteers once they had a physical location. I was married to a man who hit me, Maria said simply when Alara expressed surprise. Long time ago, before I came to work for the Moretti family. I understand what you're trying to do. I want to help. They found a building in a neighborhood that wasn't too expensive but wasn't dangerous. 3 floors, good bones, enough space for offices, counseling rooms, and temporary housing. Alara threw herself into renovations, spending 12-hour days picking paint colors and interviewing potential staff. Dante watched this transformation with something that looked like quiet satisfaction. He still ran his empire, the legitimate businesses he was slowly building to replace the criminal ones, the territories he controlled, the politicians he owned. But he made time for dinner most nights, asking about her progress, offering suggestions when she got stuck. You should talk to Rebecca, he said one evening, about being on the board. She's got connections to every women's advocacy group in the state. You think she'd do it? I think she'd be honored to do it. He paused. Sarah Mitchell called today, wanted to know if she could volunteer once the foundation opens. Alara looked up from the grant application she'd been reviewing. Really? She's finishing grad school but wants to help. Said you saved her life. She wants to pay it forward. The irony wasn't lost on Alara. The woman Vincent had kidnapped to hurt her was now volunteering to help other victims. Full circle, in the strangest way. Tell her yes. We can always use volunteers. Vincent's trial happened in May, 5 months after the warehouse incident. Alara testified again, this time with more confidence and less fear. Harding had been replaced by a public defender who tried his best but couldn't overcome the mountain of evidence. Kidnapping, assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder, money laundering, art theft. The charges stacked up like a house of cards, except this house wasn't falling, it was burying Vincent. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing came a week later. Judge Hawthorne looked down at Vincent with an expression of pure disgust. Mr. Caruso, you used your wealth and position to terrorize women for years. You believed yourself above the law, untouchable, due to your connections and resources. She adjusted her glasses. This court is here to demonstrate that no one is above the law. I hereby sentence you to 40 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for 25 years. 40 years. Vincent was 53. He'd be 78 before he could even hope for parole. Alara sat in the gallery next to Dante, watching Vincent's face as the sentence was read. She expected to feel triumph, vindication, victory. Instead, she just felt tired. It's over, Dante said quietly as they left the courthouse. Actually, over. Is it? Alara watched protesters and supporters clashing on the courthouse steps. Feels like it should be more dramatic, more final. Bad guys going to prison is never as satisfying as you think it'll be. He guided her toward the waiting SUV. But yeah, it's over. Vincent's gone. Your father's keeping his distance. You're safe. Safe. Such a simple word for such a complicated feeling. The foundation, officially named the Sophia Foundation after Dante's sister, opened its doors in July. The first week, they had 3 women walk through seeking help. By the end of the month, they'd assisted 27 people, connected 15 to housing, and provided legal aid to 10. Alara worked herself to exhaustion and loved every minute of it. This was purpose. This was using her experience, all those terrible years with Vincent, to actually help people. You're going to burn out, Dr. Reeves warned during one of their sessions. Working 80-hour weeks isn't sustainable. I'm fine. You're running from something. What is it? Alara didn't answer immediately. Then,
If I stop moving, I have to think about everything that happened, have to process it, and I don't know if I can handle that yet. Eventually you'll have to. I know, just not today. But eventually came anyway, the way it always does. It was a Tuesday in August when Alara got the call from a hospital. Victor Voss had collapsed. Heart attack, massive, chances of survival slim. They'd called her because she was his only living relative. "Do you want to go?" Dante asked when she told him. "I don't know. Should I?" "That's not my decision." She went because some part of her needed closure, even with a man who'd failed her so completely. Victor lay in the ICU, machines breathing for him, monitors beeping steadily. He looked old and small, nothing like the imposing figure from her childhood. Just a weak man who'd made terrible choices and destroyed his family in the process. Alara sat beside the bed, staring at this stranger who was technically her father. "I don't forgive you," she said quietly, "for what you did, for selling me to Vincent, for choosing yourself over your daughter every single time it mattered." The machines beeped. Victor didn't respond, probably couldn't hear her. "But I understand you were weak and scared and didn't know how to be better than you were." She stood. "I hope wherever you end up, you figure out how to be better. But I'm done carrying your failures." She left the hospital and didn't look back. Victor died 3 hours later, alone except for the nurses. Dante found her in the library that night, staring at nothing. "I'm sorry," he said, sitting beside her. "Don't be." He made his choices. She leaned against Dante's shoulder, seeking comfort. "Is it wrong that I don't feel sad?" "No, it's honest." His arm came around her. "You don't owe him grief just because he was your father. He didn't earn it. Dr. Reeves says I need to process my feelings about him, that unresolved parental issues can cause problems. Dr. Reeves is probably right, but that doesn't mean you have to cry over a man who hurt you." They sat in silence for a while. Then Alara said, "I want to expand the foundation, open a second location across town, maybe partner with other organizations doing similar work." "Okay. Just like that?" "Okay. Just like that." Dante shifted to look at her. "Alara, you've built something important, something that's helping people. Why would I object to expanding it?" "Because it costs money, because it takes time, because it matters to you, which means it matters to me." He said it simply, like it was obvious. "We've got resources. Let's use them for something good." "When did you become so supportive of nonprofit work?" "When I realized my wife is brilliant and driven and capable of changing lives." He smiled slightly. "Besides, the Sophia Foundation is excellent PR. Makes me look like a reformed criminal trying to give back." "Are you? Reformed?" "Getting there. Slowly." He stood, offered his hand. "Come on. Maria made dinner, and she'll be offended if we don't eat it." Over dinner, pasta carbonara, which Maria had perfected after weeks of Alara requesting it, they talked about expansion plans and staffing and the logistics of running multiple locations. "You'll need an executive director," Dante said. "Someone who can handle day-to-day operations while you focus on strategy. I was thinking Rebecca might have suggestions." "She will." "But Alara?" He waited until she looked at him. "This is yours, your foundation, your vision, your project. Don't let anyone, including me, take that away from you." "I won't." "Good." After dinner, they ended up on the terrace overlooking the grounds. The summer night was warm, crickets chirping, stars visible despite the city lights. "Can I ask you something?" Alara said. "Always." "When did this become real? For you? Us, I mean." Dante was quiet for a moment, considering. "The warehouse. When I saw Vincent's gun pointed at your head and realized I'd rather die than let him hurt you, that's when I knew it wasn't just about protection or strategy anymore. For me, it was earlier, when you told me about Sophia and I realized you understood what it meant to survive trauma." She turned to face him. "We're a weird couple." "Extremely weird. You're a criminal. I'm a victim-turned-advocate. We got married as a business deal and somehow ended up here." "Here being?" "Happy. Or something close to it." She smiled. "I never expected happy." "Me neither." He pulled her close. "But I'll take it." The kiss was slow and genuine, nothing like their wedding kiss or the desperate one before the warehouse.
This was partnership, affection, maybe even love, though neither of them was ready to say that word yet. When they pulled apart, Dante rested his forehead against hers. I'm not good at this, at being a husband or partner or whatever we're calling it. I'm not good at trusting people or letting them help me, so we're even. We make it work, though. We do. They stood there for a while, wrapped around each other, two broken people who'd somehow managed to build something functional out of their shared damage. The Sophia Foundation's one-year anniversary came in July of the following year. They'd helped over 300 women, opened the second location Alara had wanted, and partnered with 5 other organizations across the state. Sarah Mitchell had finished grad school and joined the staff full-time. Rebecca served on the board and brought in major donors. Maria coordinated volunteers like a general commanding troops. The anniversary gala was held at a hotel ballroom, attended by donors and advocates and politicians. Alara gave a speech about the foundation's mission and goals, her voice steady, her hands barely shaking. Dante watched from the audience with unmistakable pride. Afterward, during the reception, a young woman approached Alara nervously. Mrs. Moretti, I wanted to thank you. The foundation helped me 6 months ago, got me out of a bad situation, found me housing, helped me get a job. She twisted her hands together. I don't know if I'd be alive without you. I'm glad we could help, Alara said, meaning it. I'm starting college in the fall, criminal justice. I want to help other women like you helped me. After the woman left, Alara found herself blinking back tears. Dante materialized at her elbow with a glass of champagne. You okay? Yeah, that's why we do this, those moments. She took the glass. Thank you for making this possible. You made it possible. I just wrote checks. You did more than that. You believed in it, in me. She looked up at him. I don't say it enough, but I love you. For real. Not just gratitude or partnership. Love. Dante went still. They danced around the word for months, both too scared or damaged to say it outright. I love you too, he said quietly. Have for a while. Just didn't know how to say it. We're terrible at this. Awful, he agreed, but we're trying. That's enough. The gala continued around them, music and laughter and people celebrating the foundation's success. But in their small bubble, Alara and Dante just stood together, two people who'd found each other through darkness and somehow made it to light. 2 months later, Luca walked into Dante's office with news. It's done, all of it. The legitimate businesses are turning profit. We've divested from the drug operations entirely. Weapons trade is shut down. As of today, the Moretti organization is completely legal. Dante leaned back in his chair, processing this. How legal? Completely. Real estate development, shipping, import-export, all legitimate. No mob ties, no criminal connections. Luca smiled. You're officially a businessman instead of a crime lord. That was the goal. Doesn't feel as momentous as I expected. Rarely does, but boss, you did it. Went from running the city's largest criminal organization to running a legitimate empire. Your father would be horrified. Good. He was a bastard anyway. After Luca left, Dante sat alone in his office, contemplating this transition. He'd spent 20 years building criminal enterprises, destroying rivals, ruling through fear and violence, and now it was over. Done. He was just another businessman, albeit one with a complicated past. Alara found him there an hour later. Luca told me. Congratulations. Thanks. Feels weird. Good weird or bad weird? Uncertain weird. He gestured for her to sit. I've been Dante Moretti, the crime lord, my whole adult life. Don't really know who Dante Moretti, the legitimate businessman, is. Guess you'll figure it out. Same way I figured out who Alara Moretti, the foundation director, is. She settled into the chair across from him. We're both reinventing ourselves. Might as well do it together. When did you get so wise? Therapy helps. Also, Dr. Reeves says trauma can lead to growth if you process it properly. She smiled. I'm processing. How's that going? Better. Nightmares are down to once a month. I can handle loud noises without panicking. I even went to an art gallery last week without having a breakdown. That's progress. It is. She paused. I also saw my father's lawyer about the estate. Victor Voss had left everything to Alara. Not much after his debts were paid, but enough to matter. She'd been avoiding dealing with it for months.
I'm donating it, she said. All of it.
To the foundation and other organizations doing similar work. I don't want his money, don't want anything from him. That's your choice to make. I know, but I wanted you to know. She met his eyes. Because we're partners. In everything. And partners tell each other about important decisions. We are partners. In everything. Dante stood, walked around the desk, pulled her up into his arms. I'm proud of you. For processing. For growing. For becoming this person who helps people instead of just surviving. I'm proud of you too. For going legitimate. For choosing to be better than your father. They held each other for a long moment. Two people who'd been through hell and somehow made it out together. That night, for the first time since their wedding, Alara didn't sleep in the West Wing. She stayed in Dante's room, in his bed, and it felt right. Natural. Like coming home to a place she'd been searching for all along. This okay? Dante asked, uncertain in a way he rarely was. Yeah, it's okay. They made love slowly, carefully, both of them learning each other's boundaries and preferences. It wasn't perfect. They were both too damaged for perfect. But it was real. Honest. Built on trust and choice instead of obligation. Afterward, lying in the darkness with Dante's arm around her, Alara felt something settle in her chest. Peace, maybe. Or just the absence of fear. I'm happy, she said into the quiet. Actually genuinely happy. Didn't think that was possible. Me neither. Dante's voice was rough with sleep. But I'll take it. Yeah, me too. The Sophia Foundation continued growing. By year 3, they had 5 locations and had helped over 1,000 women. Alara hired an executive director like Dante had suggested, freeing her to focus on strategic vision and fundraising. She became known in advocacy circles, spoke at conferences, testified before legislative committees about improving support for abuse survivors. Dante's legitimate empire flourished. The real estate developments were profitable. The shipping company expanded into international markets. He even started a charitable wing, the Moretti Foundation, focused on youth programs and addiction recovery. In memory of Sophia, he told Alara when he announced it, so maybe some kid doesn't end up like she did. They bought a smaller house in the city, somewhere to escape when the estate felt too big. Adopted a rescue dog, a German Shepherd mix that Dante claimed was for security but actually just wanted belly rubs. Started hosting dinner parties for foundation donors and business partners. Built a life that looked almost normal from the outside. The nightmares never completely stopped for either of them. Alara still had bad nights where she woke up gasping, convinced Vincent was in the room. Dante still woke up from dreams about Sophia's death, about the men he'd killed, about the violence he'd committed. But they learned to comfort each other through it. Learned that trauma didn't disappear but could be managed. Learned that love wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up for each other when things got hard. 5 years after their wedding, they renewed their vows, not because they had to, not for business or strategy, just because they wanted to. The ceremony was small. Rebecca, Luca, Marco, Maria, Sarah, a handful of other people who mattered. No press, no spectacle, just 2 people choosing each other again with clear eyes and honest hearts. I take you, Alara Moretti, to be my wife, Dante said, his voice steady. To protect, to support, to love. Not because I have to, because I want to. But I take you, Dante Moretti, to be my husband, Alara replied. To trust, to challenge, to love. Not out of fear or obligation. Because I choose you. They kissed, and it tasted like promise. The reception was held at the estate, the same place where Alara had once felt like a prisoner. Now it was home. Now it was filled with people celebrating instead of enduring. Now it was hers. Speech, someone called. Alara stood, glass of champagne in hand, looking around at the faces of people who'd helped her build this new life. 5 years ago, I married a stranger to escape an abuser, she began. I thought I was trading one prison for another. Instead, I found freedom, purpose, love. She looked at Dante. I found a partner who saw me at my absolute worst and decided I was worth fighting for. You were always worth fighting for, Dante said quietly. Maybe. But you made me believe it. And that belief, that I deserved safety, deserved respect, deserved a life beyond survival, that changed everything. She raised her glass. To everyone here who's supported the foundation, who's helped women find their own freedom. Thank you. You're changing lives, you're saving people, and that matters more than you know. The toast was drunk, tears were shed, and life continued. Years passed. The foundation kept growing. Dante's businesses flourished. They fought sometimes. Two strong-willed people with trauma and opinions didn't agree on everything, but they fought fair, communicated, worked through problems instead of running from them. They talked about kids occasionally but never committed. Maybe someday. Maybe not. They had the foundation, had each other, had a life they'd built from scratch. That was enough. 10 years after their wedding, Elara gave a keynote speech at a national conference on domestic violence prevention. The audience was hundreds strong. Advocates, survivors, lawmakers, people committed to changing systems that failed vulnerable people. I want to tell you about a woman named Sophia, Elara began. She died before I met her, but her story changed my life. She told them about Dante's sister, about a young woman who'd been abused and saw no way out, about how her death had motivated Dante to help Elara, which had led to the foundation, which had helped thousands of women find freedom. Sophia didn't survive, Elara said, her voice thick with emotion. But her memory lives on in every woman we help, every survivor who walks through our doors and finds safety, every person who realizes they deserve better and finds the strength to leave. She paused, collecting herself. I'm not going to stand here and tell you trauma made me stronger. That's garbage. Trauma broke me, shattered me into pieces. But I'm going to tell you that healing is possible. That building a life beyond survival is possible. That finding people who see your value even when you can't is possible. The applause was thunderous. After the speech, dozens of people approached her, survivors sharing their stories, advocates thanking her for the foundation's work, lawmakers asking how they could help. Dante watched from the side of the room, that quiet pride on his face that she'd learned to recognize as love. When they finally escaped to their hotel room that night, Elara collapsed onto the bed. I'm exhausted. You were amazing. Dante sat beside her. Sophia would have been proud. You think? I know. He took her hand. Thank you for keeping her memory alive, for turning her tragedy into something that helps people. That's all any of us can do, take our damage and try to make something good from it. You've done more than that. You've built an empire of compassion. He smiled. I built an empire of fear. You built one of hope. Your way's better. Different methods, same goal, helping people. She squeezed his hand. We make a good team. We do. They lay there in comfortable silence, two people who'd traveled impossible distances to find each other. Outside, the city hummed with life. Somewhere, a woman was making the decision to leave her abuser. Somewhere, a survivor was finding the courage to testify. Somewhere, a person was discovering they were worth saving. And in this room, two broken people who'd learned to heal together simply existed in the peace they'd fought so hard to find. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There was no happily ever after in the traditional sense. Elara still had nightmares sometimes. Dante still carried the weight of the violence in his past. The foundation faced constant funding challenges. The world still failed vulnerable people every day, but they had each other, had purpose, had a life built on choice and trust and genuine love. And after everything they'd been through, all the darkness, all the pain, all the fear, that was more than enough. It was everything. Elara Moretti, formerly Elara Voss, the girl who'd been sold to a monster and learned to survive, had built a life beyond survival. She'd found strength she didn't know she possessed, found love in the most unexpected place, found purpose in helping others find their own freedom. And Dante Moretti, the crime lord who'd thought love was weakness, had learned that real strength meant protecting people instead of destroying them, that Sophia's death could lead to life for others, that being feared was hollow compared to being truly known and accepted. Together, they'd proven that even from the darkest past, something beautiful could grow. Not perfect, never perfect, but whole and unbroken, and theirs. And that was the only ending that mattered.